Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Tuesday. Today is... Well, I don't have a calendar. Where am I? It is the last day of February 2023. Is it... wait, is it a leap year? Today's the 28th. It is the last day of February 2023. It is not a leap year. That's our slogan around here. It's not a leap year. Welcome to the Jeff Gerstmann Show. I'm your host for this week's installment, Jeff Gerstmann. And it is not a leap year. So plan accordingly. I'm planning accordingly. My other camera fell off the top of my monitor, and I was using that as a good center line to make sure that I'm lined up and sitting at a good angle, but I don't know where that is. So it fell down behind I don't know. Ever since I took that camera and moved it over to behind the TV when we were doing some PlayStation VR2 stuff, it has not been happy with where it's been sitting. It's been hard to position back up there to get everything right again. I don't know. It's chaos around these parts, as things usually are. My son got into waking up an hour earlier than normal, which is 3:30 in the morning, which is not super cool of him. But yeah, no, it's hey, everything's going great. It rained a bunch. I don't know if you saw in the news. We had it snowed. Well, it hailed here, but I guess it snowed all around Southern California, which that's not supposed to do. They say it never rains in Southern California, which I find to be mostly true. And then a couple times a year, it seems like it decides to rain a whole lot. And once again, the sides of my house flooded. I took a broom and tried to sweep water away from the house for a little bit, and that was as effective as I expected it to be, which is to say not very, but it helped a little bit. I'm going to tell myself it helped a little bit. And so, yeah, the water did not get in my garage this time. I've got to make some plans around the garage and waterproofing the bottom of the garage door to keep water from getting in, because that's bad. I don't know. It's been in the 30s here at night. Whatever. It's like it's really cold for California. So, and it's already warming up. So I don't know. It's going to rain a little bit tonight and whatever. So it's been one of those types of. It's been a handful of days there where you're like, is the power going to go out? And, you look at the apps that show you what are people complaining about in your neighborhood. And it's people going like, our power, like it's a bunch of people from different spots in town going, our power just went out. Our power, they said it's going to be out for 5 days. They can't do that. Which is that's not how any of that works. So the power just went out 5 minutes ago and they tell me it's going to be out for like a week. Like, that's not, no one, they haven't even gotten to where the power problem I don't even know. It's ridiculous. Anyway, some video games have happened here over the past week. As Pat said in the chat, remember PlayStation VR 2? Remember that thing? Remember when they put that out? It's still out. They went ahead and announced a few new games for it. Some additional indie kind of stuff. And yeah, it's my opinion on it has not changed with some additional time with the device. I have not had time to really dig into too much more of the library just yet because I just haven't had time. So, I'm mostly like, okay, what's a good sitting experience I can do at night without having to clear the space and clear everything out of the way. And so, there's been a little bit of Gran Turismo 7 happening here and there, which is not something honestly, that's maybe the most surprising thing about the release of PlayStation VR 2 is that it's turned me into someone who's like, maybe I should play some more Gran Turismo 7. Which is not something I would say. That's like if you see me saying that and like the fucking they have a gun to my, there's the hostage, I'm a hostage somewhere type of statement. But there you have it. I don't know. It's really neat in VR. And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, without totally recapping everything, I'll say same deal. If you missed the stuff last week, the PlayStation VR 2 is a really nice headset. I can't recommend it. It's really nice. If money is no object to you, and you care about virtual reality, and you don't care about then it's awesome. It's a really great headset for playing games on a PlayStation 5. I just saw a video this morning on a fledgling new video website called TikTok, which I think is named after that Kesha song. And it showed someone playing, I don't think this is running in an emulator. I'm not, but someone had gone and recreated The Legend of Zelda, the first game. Some portion of it. I don't know how much, because again, this TikTok thing, it's about short videos. Short videos, not like 3-hour extravaganzas, but like more like 3 minutes maximum. And even like a 3-minute video is rare. So it was a very short video about someone playing a first-person Legend of Zelda game using the sprites and tiles from the original game, but set into first person. And so he goes into the cave and he gets the sword, and he's got a sword and shield that he's kind of doing VR stuff with. If you've ever seen a sword and shield in VR, it's that game. But it is, he's moving the shield around. He's shooting the sword at things. And is it a Doom mod? It could be a Doom mod. Yeah, it could be made in one of those engines. Absolutely, could be something like that. But it did not specify what it was. So, and it's silly. You look at it and you're like, that's a dumb little thing. And you're shooting the sword at the enemies, and what? But it's a stupid little thing that would be nice to fuck around with. You know what I mean? It'd be nice to be able to see that and mess with it for 20 minutes and go like, wow, this is neat. But with PlayStation VR 2, you simply cannot. And so that's kind of the larger issue I think I take with the headset, is that it is limited. And potentially, there's always a chance down the line that someone liberates the headset from the shackles of its closed domain and makes it do something when you plug into a PC. That would be really neat. That'd be nice, because it's a nice headset. If that was a non-clunky process, because otherwise, I have a Quest 2 and you might as well just use that. But yeah, like a lot of my recommendation around PlayStation VR 2 has to do with like, VR is nonsense, and people are doing weird mods and doing weird things all the time, and it's nice to be able to mess with that stuff, experience that stuff, have the option, even if you don't. It's nice to have the option to be able to experience the maximum amount of VR available, and right now, that's just not the PlayStation VR 2. It's not the PlayStation VR 1. It's and especially at those prices in this economy, well, and so on and so forth. It's Anyway, follow me on TikTok at FredDurst2000. I have made some changes around here. Some big changes. And I'm going to talk about that right now. I have decided, in the interests of having a quieter controller experience, I have made the decision to hook a PlayStation 5 controller up to my PC. I know. I've done it. It's already done. I did this to when Returnal, I was going to play some more Returnal and decided that I wanted to, check and see how all the haptic stuff worked on PC with a PlayStation 5 controller and so on and so forth. Yes, I have made this change because quite literally, and you don't realize it, but I hooked it up for that, and then as I was using it, I realized, oh my god, this controller is silent compared to the clicky D-pad of an Xbox controller. This is not loud. Unless you happen to have an 18-month child sleeping behind you while you attempt to play video games. In which case, it's too loud. But this D-pad, no problem. Practically silent. A little, if I'm really jerking it around here, it'll make a little noise. If I hold it right up to the microphone. But yeah, that ended up being a nice side benefit. This controller was my launch PS5 controller that I retired when I got a purple one. I bought the purple one. And so now that I have all the lights on, I'm like, this is a really dusty controller. Hooking a PlayStation 5 controller up to a PC works, and then also is weird because as soon as I hooked it up, it decided that's an audio device. We should redirect all audio to come out of that speaker. And I was like, why can't I hear anything coming out of my headphones? Wait, what's that noise? And realized that with a child sleeping behind me, I had the entirety of the audio of Returnal coming out of the speaker on the controller. And that sucked. So then I disabled the speaker, and then none of the haptics worked after that. It didn't do any vibrating whatsoever. Because I suspect that's because the haptics work like a speaker. You send a waveform to it, and that makes the haptics work. And so I assumed that maybe the Windows just saw all that as one big sound device, and so I had to re-enable the controller, the speaker, but then whatever. Anyway, I had to jump through a few hoops, but it's been working just fine. And then even in games where it wouldn't work because it's not an X input controller, Steam will sit in the middle of all of that and convert things to Xbox if you so desire. But again, if you do that, if that box is checked, at least this is how it was for me, Returnal will see it as an Xbox controller, and you won't get the better haptics and you won't get the trigger stuff. And so, anyway. It's come a long way. I downloaded, Sony released this a while ago, but I ended up downloading the firmware update tool that they put out for PC for people for the dozens and dozens of people that bought a PlayStation controller despite not having a PlayStation to hook it up to. That said, I totally downloaded it because I didn't want to go plug this into a PlayStation and turn it on just to update the firmware. So it actually was super convenient, but, and then it happened so fast. I was like, this is actually pretty nice. I'm like, I fired up some Call of Duty, stuff where it's like, I can tell if there's a performance change due to a controller, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm playing like garbage, or this isn't working anymore. And I loaded up Call of Duty and played some of that. And I was like, this worked. This is great. I'm doing just fine. My scores are well within the whatever parameter, the same as I was getting with an Xbox controller. I was like, you know what? I might just stick with this for a while and see how it goes, because again, it's just a quieter controller. And then after that, I had a moment of well, what have I bought? Oh, maybe I should get the expensive PlayStation controller with the swap out analog. No, I don't need to spend $200 on a weird fancy PlayStation controller. I don't need that, period. So there you have it. Yeah, it's a big time around here. We're all very happy. And yeah. What else is going on? I have been playing Akka Rr, which I think that's how you pronounce that. Akka Rr is weird, man. What a strange trek this game took to get to market, I guess. So Akka Rr started out life as an Atari game in the 1980s, and it was prototyped and a version of it existed out there. You know, they're in very limited form, and it is not a great game. It's a game that it would show up at like I believe that a cabinet for it showed up at like California Extreme at least once. I'm trying to remember because I feel like I had played it or at least seen it before, but the ROMs were not dumped and they were not floating around out there until they were all of a sudden. And my understanding, the story, I don't know if it's apocryphal or what, but it sounds like maybe someone who was coming in to service the machine for the collector just said, "Oh, fuck it," and dumped the ROMs and then released them on the internet, and now MAME supports it and whatever else. And so, you know, they kind of got preserved that way. I believe that's the right game for that. I should look that up. But there was some hero on an infiltration mission, Operation Intrude. N313 was really about liberating the Akka Rr ROMs. It's not a great game. It was sort of a reverse missile command in some ways. You were sitting in the center and enemies would come in from around the edges, and you would, I guess, trackball around to kill them, I believe, is how the original cabinet layout was. The game would then show up in Atari 50, you know, once the ROMs were out there and stuff, and Atari was like, well, this is our game. It made its way into that collection. And so, you know, that's a more legit way for you to play that original prototype game. But when you play it, you go like, I see maybe this wasn't released. Like, it's not super well defined. Like, it has some ideas, but you just go like, yeah, I could see why this wasn't, you know, maybe doing it and earning a bunch of quarters or whatever the metric was. I guess that was the metric, right? And so they didn't go ahead and release it. So it finds its way into this compilation and all this other stuff. And now also, this game just came out, is Jeff Minter's reinterpretation of Akka Rr, which is a weird layer to throw on top of it. You got this game that's like, it's finished enough. Like, you know, you would probably do some stuff to it visually before you put it out for real. And it went away for a reason. It's not that fun. And, you know, it kind of... it doesn't suck. It's just a little dull, right? And then Jeff Minter takes the idea, the core of the concept, strips it all apart, and puts it back together in a very different way. It is a decidedly different game than the original was in terms of kind of how you play. Like, there are extreme similar. I guess I would liken it to Space Giraffe is not Tempest. It is kind of, there are parts of it that is Tempest kind of turned on its head in a few ways. It is, you know, visually you look at it and go, it's a Tempest, but it's a very different sort of thing. You look at this and go like, oh, this looks like Akka Rr, and then you play it and you're like, this is a very different sort of thing. It's sort of like another game that I bet very few people will remember. It reminds me a lot of Every Extend Extra or Every Extend Extra Extreme, or just Every Extend, I guess, if you're into E2. And the basic idea of it is that you are a turret in the center of the screen, and you are shooting out bombs, and the bombs blow up in a very missile command-like way. They kind of go, you know. And so if an enemy, you know, enemy patterns will spawn and come in, and if enemies get caught by the explosion, they will then also have a radius that they explode in. And so there's a golf metaphor here that the game actually uses pretty directly. It'll say you got a par. It'll say you got, you know, in kind of the post-level bonuses. But the idea is you want to shoot as few bombs as possible and get the longest explosion chain of enemies that you can. For every enemy that you kill, you get a bullet for a separate weapon that won't break your multiplier and it won't break your chain. But if killing enemies with that doesn't create a big explosion, so you can't use that to start a chain. Except there are some enemies that are also bombs, and if you shoot those, they will explode. So there's kind of layers upon it. But the core idea is that you want to ideally shoot a single bomb and have a chain of explosions going on for the rest of the level as it kills every single enemy. And I don't think that's necessarily, maybe that's possible on every single level. I have no idea. But that's the idea. You want to kind of shoot as few bombs as possible, because every time you shoot a new bomb, it lowers your multiplier back down to 0. And so your score is going to be way lower for every bomb you shoot. So the idea is you want to place these things ultra tight, be super smart about it. Different levels will have different kind of mechanics around how the bombs explode. There'll be levels with symmetrical explosions. So like if you shoot one in the lower right corner, the lower right quadrants, there will be explosions in the other quadrants as well. There are some that have different colored layers, and so the explosions only extend within their colored layer. And so if you shoot a bomb in the inner layer, it'll only get things in the inner layer, and so it's very simple. It is a one-button game by default. You can change it into a 2-button game for one dedicated button for bomb and for bullets, which I highly recommend. That is a much better way to play the game. And then occasionally, and this is another part that was in the original prototype, enemies will kind of get to your turret and they will take it downstairs. And so once that happens, you can kind of teleport to a turret that's down a level and then do some fighting there that's a little more close quarters. You don't want that to happen because you have pods down there. And if the pods get blown up, you lose. Makes perfect sense, right? Right? This is just the Curtis Horde. I feel like I'm doing a bad version of the Curtis Horde video game descriptions here. I feel like I'm just doing like this.
Dig Dug. Dig Dug is a brand new game with the possibility of patterns, but never the same screen. The object of the game is to kill the 2 types of creatures following you, the Fygar and the Puka, without them killing you. The Fygar, or green guy, breathes fire on a horizontal plane only. So when you're near the Fygar and moving horizontally, you need to move vertically up or down to avoid getting killed. The Puka just flies around at you. Both creatures can walk across any obstacle. In this game you make tunnels. However, when you are digging a tunnel, the creatures move twice as fast as you do. When you are out in the open, though, you are faster and can outrun them. There are 2 ways to kill the creatures. You can pump them up with the pump button, or you can catch them under a rock. To kill using the pump button, you must push it several times and the creature will burst.
And so on and so forth. Anyway, it starts with a very kind of handy tutorial about what it wants you to do in order to do well at the game, which is smart, because I think that there's, if you just went into it and started shooting over and over again, your scores would be garbage. Like, would you survive? Of course you would, but that's not the point. You need to kind of build up your score, and it's a score type of game. There's no VR in it that I'm pretty sure there's no VR in it at all, unlike the past few Llamasoft releases. And I think it's a really awesome reimagining of a game that just didn't have it. It's kind of cool, because so many games that get remade, or hey, there's a new version of this, it's like they're just classics, right? It's like Tempest is a really good example, right? Like Tempest is on like the very short list of just kind of like arcade greats, like just true classics. If you were building a top 20 or golden era arcade game, whatever, Tempest would almost certainly make your list. And with Defender and Pac-Man, like whatever. Akka Rr is nowhere near that list, right? It didn't even come out for real. And so this idea of taking this completely lost game that recently got uncovered, that is not great, and then turning it into something else, not just having this like devoted remake of like, we've made the graphics better in Akka Rr. Like, no one, that's not. But to take it and go like, okay, we're going to actually turn this into more of a score-based game, more of a combo-based game in a way that actually fits, I think, with kind of the Llamasoft style really well. It does the same thing of like, oh, you can restart at your highest level with your score intact, like some of the things that they have done in past games, that some of the stuff that Tempest did that they then put into many of their games. And it's got a very different sound. Like the audio of the explosions is musical and kind of more generative. So it's not just like, here's this techno soundtrack blasting at you while you shoot stuff and then there's a bunch of samples. Like I feel like the typical audio element of a Llamasoft game is pretty well defined. This goes against a lot of that, but that said, I think it's awesome. Like it's a really cool sounding game. It's a very kind of, I was gonna say a Zen like experience, but you do have to really think on the fly. You have to think on your feet as you're trying to light up these shots and do this stuff. But it's a very neat game. That again, not something that is it's the challenge doesn't come from survival. The challenge comes from trying to chain these combos together into something really crazy. And that's where I think it gets very similar. Like if you played every Extend Extra Extreme E4, which I believe was the XBLA release that Q Entertainment did, that's a game about when you hit the button, your ship explodes, and your ship, then the explosion of that ship causes the chain reaction. And so then you spawn a new ship and have to place it somewhere and then blow it up. And so this is, I think it's very similar to that, in that you kind of want to blow up your ship as few times as possible to maximize your combo and have this other stuff going. And so I think that there's there's a pretty, I feel like there's a pretty direct connection conceptually. And I don't know, I don't know that Jeff Minter, I don't know that Llamasoft really set out to do that, or if this is just kind of happenstance or whatever, but it reminds me a lot of E4, every Extend Extra Extreme, which I didn't like very much. I remember going like stylistically, I was like, this is an awesome idea, but playing E4, I was like, I hate this. And Akka Rr is pretty cool. It's on Steam, it's on Switch. I don't know where else it is. I don't know what other platforms it has appeared on, but it is on both of those. Give it a look. Go watch the trailer. See if it speaks to you. It's not, it's definitely not something I'll be like, you need to run out and buy it immediately, because I think that there's a specific type of person that will be into this type of game. But I would say go watch the trailer for it, and if it speaks to you, I think it's pretty fun. So, yeah. Fat Scout with the question, if E4 had a bunch of E40 songs instead of Genki Rockets, would you have liked it more? Yes. But also I like Genki Rockets. And so if it had been E40 rapping over Genki Rockets tracks, maybe that would have been the perfect combination. I believe I saw it on, I forget where I saw it. If someone sent it to me. E40 has burritos? I saw something called the Turf Burrito. I saw a sign for a Turf Burrito, a picture of it, I guess, in a convenience store frozen section window, and it was just called the Turf Burrito. The entrepreneur, E40, spreading out all over the place. He's got his wine. Him and Merton Hanks own Fat Burgers in the East Bay. Good on him. Good on Earl. And the Turf Burrito. I'll probably never find them. I'll probably never see a Turf Burrito. And I'll have to look around. I don't know. Southern California might not be the best place to find a Turf Burrito. So I don't know that I will ever see them in the wild, unfortunately. But I'm just excited that E4. That's a very exciting development. I fooled around with a little Destiny 2. not much to say about it other than the big expansion launches, I guess, today. Are the servers down to come back up tonight, or are they up? I didn't actually look to see what the launch time was, but the trailers, the story, the stuff that they have been putting out there for Lightfall, I think looks really cool. I am really excited to see what happens. You know, what is the story of Destiny 2? It seems like the Traveler might actually do something, which if you haven't played Destiny 2, the Traveler is just a big space ball that kind of hasn't really done much. It's just, but people worship it like it's a god. And yeah, I don't know. Like, what are the shapes going to do? Yeah, yes, that's right. The Traveler shot a bunch of ships at the end of the season. That's right. Yeah, so I tried to play what was, I guess, the season ending event, but they wanted you to play that with a team, I think, and I was trying to solo it. I got pretty far, and then got to the end of it, and I was like, man, this is a frustrating fight, and I'm gonna quit and do something else. And yeah, so I don't know. I'm really excited about what they're doing with Destiny 2. It sounds like they're revamping a lot of the things that will kind of help people get into the game or help people kind of reacquaint themselves with the game in a way. And that seems like something that probably needs to happen. They've been talking a lot about that and trying to figure out that specific issue, right? Of just like, okay, how do I, how do we get players back into this? And some of the stuff they're talking about revamping systems wise just sounds really cool. Just sounds really good. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to kind of see all that stuff and get new fun gear and do stuff. Today is I guess like we've got probably like not long at all, right? But Rumbleverse is over. Yesterday I guess was the last full day of Rumbleverse. It's unfortunate. They've been sending out like exit survey type things. Like again, when we talked about when they announced this, and I'm working to get someone on the show. Maybe we'll see maybe in the next couple of weeks here. Yeah, the announcement sounded like that they kind of wanted to bring it back. That there were hints around the edges about like maybe this isn't the last you've seen of it, but in a really non-committal way, but in a way that says that they would certainly like to keep this game running if they can. And so I wonder what's going to happen if they're going to take it offline and revamp it and put it back out, or what I don't know. And we'll see what ends up happening with that thing. It's a weird. I don't know. It's obviously like it's a cutthroat. It's a cutthroat world out there for live games, for battle royale games, all of that stuff, right? Like there's they had a pretty low maximum player count, which helps, right? If your game requires 100 people to run, then you need to have more people online all the time than if you have a game that requires 40 people to run. And so their player count, their player cap, I guess, per match was 40, and that always worked really well. The matches felt really snappy. You never felt like you were like not seeing people. Like the circles were tight enough that you were always kind of finding action. And yeah, I don't know. It's a fighting game based take on the battle royale. It had that kind of those sorts of systems in place that it felt really fun. Fibosh in the chat says it felt like marketing was lackluster. I don't know that well, it's I have a weird perspective on it, right? So obviously I knew about Rumbleverse. I'd heard of Rumbleverse when I got emails from PR people saying, "Hey, we'd like to tell you about this new game that is unannounced." And I'd be like, I am aware. And yeah, so but yeah, I don't know. Like it felt like there were people that got way into it, but also yeah, it was a game that I would just wonder what Epic is doing conceptually, I guess. Like what are their thoughts around the types of games they want to publish and put out there themselves, right? Because they published this, and it wasn't a situation like Rocket League where they bought the developer, right? But and Rocket League was already huge when they picked it up and everything else, right? So there were, like Epic has done that a few times, right? They bought the Fall Guys team. Like Epic has a run of like very big free-to-play multiplayer games, right? And so I could see a Rumbleverse sitting alongside of those as long as they are smart about cross-pollinating and marketing all four of the games together to each other and so on and so forth. And, there's, there's synergy there, right? Where you try to push people from one game to the other. Hey, try this out. But there are things about that game that like, it was not established the way that those other games were. And so it needed more of that. And then if you're Epic, you're probably desperately always trying to keep the Fortnite numbers up. And so any time spent marketing a game that isn't Fortnite probably doesn't help you as much monetarily, especially a game that they only published and don't actually own. So maybe it's a situation where it's just a weird fit for Epic. I don't know. I guess I'd say, yeah, maybe it's a weird fit for Epic to publish it. Considering the other stuff they have, I don't know. It's a cool game. When they changed the music for season 2, I thought that the launching out of the cannon, falling into the city music got me amped every single time. It was fun. I don't know. It's a fun ass game. So hopefully it fucking comes back in some form. I don't know. That's a weird thing to say, right? Because like I said, so many games come and go, so many multiplayer only games, so many live server based games. Is this also the last week for Babylon's Fall? I believe if it was not this week, maybe it was last week, but like that's another one that is disappearing. It's not that qualitatively, I would not compare Rumbleverse to Babylon's fucking Fall, but you know what I mean. It's tough out there, right? For multiplayer games. There are so many massive free-to-play multiplayer focused games that like, how do you market? How do you find a way to get that game in front of people? All of that stuff. It's, whether you're Babylon's Fall, which like, or your Rumbleverse, or, if the quality is there, if the quality's not there, it's still hard to get people to be aware that the game exists, right? So Averon says Babylon's Fall turn off server moment had 17 players. That's yeah, that sounds about right. I'm smirking over here, but like that must fucking suck, right? To be a team that spent years, literal years, like people just like, hey, I've spent 2 years of my life, however long it was, working on Babylon's Fall, and we're really excited about it. We got it over the finish line. We ran into some stuff along the way. We, maybe we fought with the publisher a little bit. Maybe they wanted us to make a different game than we wanted to. Whatever happened, hey, we got it there. Am I proud of it? Hey, it's shipped. Hey, so yes, I'm proud of it. We made it. And then you put it out, and you're like, oh, fuck, because Babylon's Fall was one that like, you could tell out of the gate that thing was not going to go. You could tell right away. That was a day one failure. You look at that, you're like, no way. People are not going to get sucked into this. People are not going to get drawn into this. It's a weird mess. And so, yeah, what are you going to do? It's brutal out there, I guess is my point. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens to Rumbleverse. If anything happens to Rumbleverse, but like, but at the same time, I don't want to sound like there's one guy out there going like, man, Lawbreakers is gonna come. They're gonna find a way to bring Lawbreakers back. It's so we'll see what ends up happening there. I cracked this open. I didn't even talk about it. I guess it's energy drink time. This is, what is this? This is another one of these G Fuels that they sent over. This can is damp because I had it in the freezer for a good long time. This is G Fuel Snow Cone. Let's see if this is any good. I'm starting to have my doubts about G Fuel in general. Also, what does a snow cone take? Well, they've got a picture of like a red, white, and blue kind of. Like what, snow cone is just the delivery mechanism. It's like, is it a cherry snow cone? Is it a strawberry snow cone? Like what is, just saying it's snow cone flavored is weird. But yeah, does this end up like a blue raspberries? What is the? This just smells like an amalgamation of fruity syrup, kind of getting that blue flavor. This doesn't smell well. This is all right. Kind of a cherry-ish. Yeah, there's something else in here. There's another fruit flavor in here somewhere. Yeah, that's all right. I don't know. You could drink it. Let's get the list up. So I went to the P.O. box earlier this week. Or no, when did I go? I went over the weekend. No, when did I go? I forget, man. It's a blur. Anyway, I went to the P.O. box and I went to the convenience store next to the P.O. box and found a little something known as C4 Fruit Punch, which I had not seen before. Can I lower this down without? No, I can't. I can't do that without. And we'll get into the packages that showed up. We'll get into later in the week. We'll do maybe some kind of mailbag-ish sort of thing, perhaps tomorrow on a stream. So, me being a fan of Fruit Punch, and most of the C4 drinks have been at least okay, I was like, well, all right. I don't know if this is a brand new flavor, or if it's just something that this weird store carries that I haven't seen anywhere else, or what. But it's like it's black cans, and the black cans of C4 seem to be newer. I'm not sure. Anyway, this Fruit Punch made it to number 2 on the list, second only to Rockstar Zero Fruit Punch. And it's got a bit of a chemical back end to it, but it tastes a lot like Tahitian Treat. We were talking about Tahitian Treat earlier, which I was at the Shasta Corporation's Fruit Punch. It's their Hawaiian Punch-esque drink. And this sits somewhere in the middle there of the kind of the Tahitian Treat Hawaiian Punch style, but with the kind of an abundance of caffeine. And so I drank that driving back, and I was very surprised by how good that was. Very surprised. This C4 Snow Cone, if I had anything to say about it, it's that the flavor is a little weak. I wish that the flavor was a little bit stronger, because that would be better at hiding the chemical end of it. I think the chemical load of a C4 is less harsh, generally speaking, tasting wise, when it pokes through, than G Fuel's is. The chemical load. But But this is all right. This is decent. I would probably say, well, it's certainly better than Miami Nights. It's better than Orange Vibe. I might put it in a It is not as good as Rockstar Recovery Orange. It is not as good as Monster Energy Ultraviolet. I would probably drink a Ghost Cherry Limeade before this. The Arctic Snow Cone, I remember being all right. Monster Energy Ultra Gold, the Swedish Fish. Some people swear by it. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Ghost Swedish Fish flavor. It is better than the A-Shock Energy Blue Raspberry, though. And so I'm going to say we are going to find ourselves. It is going to make its appearance. Let's paste the list in so I can show you. It is our new number 21. That is the highest ranking G Fuel on the list at G Fuel Snow Cone. So congratulations to the folks at G Fuel. Yeah, that's all right. But yeah, that C4 Fruit Punch, I was very surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be. I think some of the C4 has actually been quite good. And I love a nice fruit punch, but that's maybe the cutting edge on it, right? Because I love fruit punch, and so if it's wrong, it's all the way wrong. But yeah, very surprised, very taken aback by the quality of the C4 fruit punch. Why don't we get into the news? Elden Ring DLC has been announced. You knew it was coming. They knew you knew it was coming. You even suspected exactly what the DLC would be about and what character it might focus on. And yes, all of this seems to be true. They have announced an upcoming expansion for Elden Ring called Shadow of the Erd Tree is currently in development. And that's it. They put out an image. People zoomed in on the image and said, there's a blonde boy on the horse. That's the guy from the... And then 19 hours of lore videos later, you're like, okay, sure. Shadow of the Nerd Tree is more like it. Got him. Deal with that, Congress. Yeah, so no further details. It's literally a tweet. In terms of, when is that coming out? When is, where is that? How far? And they just say it is currently in development. And they say, we hope you look forward to new adventures in the lands between. So there you have it. That's they should do that. I'm as a professional business analyst, I think they should make some more Elden Ring and sell it. I think I think they should do that. They should make that happen. That's just me as a businessman. If I was in the Elden Ring business, I'd probably make more Elden Ring. I don't know. That's probably what I would do. And so they're doing it. Good on them. Speaking of businessmen, David Zaslav, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who runs the games division of Warner Brothers, decided to warn a brother in an earnings call to let you know Mortal Kombat 12 will be coming out in 2023. There it is. Boom. Your full-on announcement, launch trailer with hip-hop and Scorpion and brr, and there you go. No? It was a sentence in an earnings call. So Yeah, they're going to make a new Mortal Kombat. I don't know. This, again, everyone kind of knew this was kind of the direction they were going in. It felt like this was the thing they were working on, right? And even though if you look at their recent output, it would have been time for them to do a new Injustice game. The thinking was that, or the speculation around it, I guess, was that because there was talk about Warner Brothers selling off their game studios and getting rid of all their stuff, that maybe it would be safer for this team to be working on a Mortal Kombat game than it would be to working on something that had a bunch of DC characters in it, in case they were no longer part of the Warner DC family, which would make that sale a lot more complicated. And so the other obvious choice, make another Mortal Kombat. Why not? This is weird, though. So he did specifically refer to it as Mortal Kombat 12. Christoph in the chat says, is Microsoft buying them? If this Activision deal hadn't popped up, I could have seen a world in which Microsoft tried to buy NetherRealm. I think that there's, right now, obviously no, right? There's Microsoft is busy with a lot of other stuff, so no. But yes, while that was on the market, or while that studio seemed to be maybe on the market, I guess is maybe the right way to put that. I could have seen Microsoft wanting to make a bid on that. I could have seen Microsoft trying to bid on that and potentially getting it done. But no, it didn't happen. That's again, I could have seen that going down that way, but Microsoft was in the middle of the Bethesda stuff and then the Activision stuff came along and whatever. So no. The Mortal Kombat franchise is in a really interesting position right now, story-wise. Because if you finished the stuff in the last one, they put out that Aftermath DLC that had some new story stuff in it, and that game was really about manipulation of time and the nature of the universe. Basically, like, the way that the reboot happened, the way when Mortal Kombat 9 happened and it looked a lot like the first 3 games in the franchise, it's because they came up with a weird time rewind potion that rewinded everything and made it all happen again, and it let them get back to basics when it comes to the characters and the style of fighting and the locations, and it let them effectively make a reboot of the franchise while still technically having the story moving forward. And so over the course of the 3 games after that, 9, 10, and 11, they really got into creating a bunch of new characters based on this kind of splintered timeline, and telling a very different story than they did through, 1 through 4, 1 through 5, whatever the first chunks of Mortal Kombat games are. But like the way this last one ends, it's with everything rewound and undone, and Liu Kang just kind of sitting there going, like, all right, well, what do we want to make as a god? And so there's, I think I have that. I think I have that right. It's been a while, but it's Liu Kang standing on a fucking rock in the middle of space going like, shit, man, I don't know. And so it really kind of wraps up everything they've done to this point in a way that lets them kind of do whatever. And so there's much more of a clean slate here story-wise than I think that they have ever had before, if they want to follow on from that. And clearly they do. I don't think there's much. They couldn't just go write a prequel to Mortal, they couldn't jam it in the middle somewhere. It wouldn't make sense. And so I'm very curious to see what they end up doing with the franchise going forward, because they've had a lot of time, right? I mean, we don't know, did they spend time working on Injustice and then throw that away, or did they lose a bunch of time working on another game that ended up not happening? I honestly do not know. But they've had a lot of time to work on, mechanically at least, what they think the next game should be. And mechanically, if they were working on Injustice for a period of time, it's mechanically a different thing than Mortal Kombat in a lot of ways. For as much as there's similarities, you can hold back to block in Injustice. It's a ridiculous video game. And so there's so many things that they could do, right? They have the ability to say fuck it on every single, because now they've had 3 games. And if you remember, this is right around the point they get to that they have made significant changes, right? If we look at the Mortal Kombat franchise and we look at the games across the board, you have 1 through 3. They're all 2D games. They all are visually similar. They all play incredibly similarly. Then you have Mortal Kombat 4. It's a polygonal game. It introduces 3D movement, but not full on. It works as kind of a bridge game. It's kind of experimental and would lead to Mortal Kombat's 5, 6, and 7, which were the PS2 era, the Wii with the creative fatality, all the motor combat, the puzzle combat, all of the weird modes, all of the weird weapon stances, and it really became a dramatically different game. I've been going back and playing a little bit of Deadly Alliance. It's not bad. It's just really, I don't like it the same way I like other Mortal Kombat games. I don't like it the way I like Mortal Kombat. You play it and go like, this is an interesting fighting game, but it's kind of not Mortal Kombat. It doesn't feel... Basically, when they got rid of, the sweeps and the uppercuts and a lot of the kind of universal stuff, it just kind of just felt like a different thing, The weapon stance changes are an interesting idea. It's a game... Those are a series of games filled with really interesting ideas that on paper, you go like, wow, that's awesome. And then in practice, like, it's funny because like those are the Mortal Kombat games that my wife was largely exposed to because she had an Xbox and she just, those were... So she, was not out at arcades or whatever, but like, so like she has favorite Mortal Kombat characters that I'm like, who? What? What? Nitara? What? I don't. Is that? It's a vamp. There's a vampire. Okay, all right, vampire lady. Sure, I guess. I don't know. So like that whole era to me is like incredibly forgettable. And so you have those 3 games kind of building on that idea, building on that concept. And then you've got a bridge game. That bridge game ends up being Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, a game that still tries to do some of the 3D stuff, but also brings back a lot of the kind of classic 2D Mortal Kombat stuff and brings all of that kind of back in. And that game is widely derided. Like people fucking hate it. Like it's a key game in where we are today, in a lot of ways. Also, I thought it was kind of cool. I don't know. Like it's not as good as the games that came after it, but at the time it was pretty fucking neat. And then we get to Mortal Kombat 9, which they end up just calling Mortal Kombat, which gets right back to like, hey, this is a 2D game. Throw the spear, it's gonna fucking hit him. You can't just sidestep it. And they get back to something that more closely resembles the first trilogy of games, but also with a bunch of new mechanics and the combo breaker, like some of the stuff that they introduced in that previous trilogy of games. So then you have Mortal Kombat 9, 10, and 11, and here we are. 9, 10, and 11, pretty similar conceptually, in terms of how they do meters, how they think about things, they expanded on those concepts over that trilogy of games, but they should do something else. They should find a way to expand it into something else. I just don't know what, right? And so I think Mortal Kombat 12 gives them, again, a clean slate from a story standpoint, but also it's time for them to come up with something else. If you look at their past, if you look at how the Mortal Kombat franchise has developed, this would be the point that they would say, okay, now we're going to try some shit, because otherwise they're going to make a 4th one of those games. And that'll do fine. That'll be a very big fighting game. And if it was just another one of those or whatever, like that would be cool. New characters, new moves, whatever. But I wonder if there will end up being more dramatic changes to the systems and to the combat itself. And so I would watch for that. I could go either way on it because I like the way those games play quite a bit. But I would be interested in seeing like, well, okay, what would you change? Because I think sidesteps and 3D stuff, I generally speaking, I don't think that works really well with MK. Because I like it when the projectiles hit instead of just having someone step out of the way. Yeah. So, but it also gives them a point to totally revamp the characters, the story, the lore, when it takes place. Like, they really have a clean slate story-wise. And so they should make Scorpion a lady. Think about it. What if Scorpion was a pretty lady and also a hell demon? Yeah? Like that sort of stuff, right? Do they end up, like remixing every single character because they can? So if you think about it in terms of like, okay, well now like Liu Kang is sort of a god. He's the elder god. Where does that leave Raiden? Maybe Raiden is the chosen one. Maybe this is, like how do they tell that story? What do they end up doing in just conceptually with that stuff, right? I think that there's a lot of room for them to really try something new. And so I wonder where they get to with that. And because if it ends up being, here's these same 12-ish characters that are the core characters of the franchise, and then we've come up with some new ones along the way, do you end up with fatigue's not the word, but like I guess like there's an opportunity to do something really out there. And I think given the choice, I would rather see them go fucking out there and do wild shit with those characters. But like, hey, in the retelling of this universe, this character was never born, but this one was. And hey, this one ended up being a little different, and this one ended up being this way. And Curtis Stryker is a movie star, and Johnny Cage is a cop. That's it, man. That's the only change. It's the exact same universe. Only difference is that Johnny Cage is a cop and Curtis Stryker is an action movie superstar. Put it out, ship it. Done. Fucking done. It's a ROM hack for MK3 with really good netcode. Just put it out. In this one, there are 3, if not 4, different Sub-Zeros instead of he's got more brothers this time. And this one, that scars on the other side of the face. I don't know. There's a million. You could do a lot of really weird, subtle timeline, silly stuff like that, but also do some really major timeline stuff along the way. And I don't know. I don't know what you end up doing along the way. So we'll have to, I guess, wait and see. They said it would come out this year, right? So it's March. If we figure that game, well, they were always in April. They always shipped in April. I guess that's off the table now, because that would be weird if they were like, by the way, it's out next month. And the Evo games have already been announced and stuff like that. So they would have. Surely they would have put the game out by now. The earnings call made it sound like it would be out this calendar year is how I took the statement. Because it was just this kind of offhand, like, yeah, we're thinking big things for the next Mortal Kombat 12, and also out in 2023, along with Suicide Squad. We think that's gonna be big. Do you think Suicide Squad is going to be big? That's my question for you out there. I I am, I guess I would say, really open to the idea of a big live game, right? I think that while I am already playing enough of them to think, hey, I don't know that I need more of those in my life right now. I am not going to fault anyone for trying. And nothing about that game seems, especially with the possible exception of Samoa Joe. I don't know that there's anything about the Suicide Squad game that is really speaking to me. And I don't know that I have seen a lot of positivity out there in the public sentiment around this game either. Which, who knows? Like, it's still a big franchise. When they ship it, who knows? Maybe it'll end up being huge. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that it just looks kind of bland. But also, I think, there are people out there that are saying, like, this doesn't look like a Rocksteady game. Good. Like, that is there have been a lot of those Batman games. Like, I think I thought we were all in agreement that they need to not make another fucking Batman game. And so if they just make a Suicide Squad game and it just plays like all the Batman games, they've fucked up. Because you might as well have just let people play as Batman at that point. And so I think that they should try to do something else. This just doesn't really seem like the sort of thing. I couldn't even tell you the names of the characters in this thing. And I watched some of their presentation and I still have already, like, Samoa Joe plays a shark man, right? I cannot name a single people in chat are saying Mr. Boomerang, and I think that's fake, right? That's not real, right? King Shark. Okay, yeah. King Shark. Mr. Boomerang, Captain Boomerang. That's not, people in chat are fucking with me. This is like they're like inventing fucking fake DC superheroes now. None of this is real. None of that's fucking real. You guys are fucking out of your mind. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about the Suicide Squad. I don't know anything about those characters. I'm not like I think Rocksteady has been a highly talented team, and I would love to see them do something different, but this doesn't really seem like the thing. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll all be blown away. But like, again, I'm sitting here talking about it in chat here, and I have not seen any positivity around this game at all. And I'll be curious to see how it lands, right, when it finally comes out, because Jesus. People seem very down on it. DC has a condiment man? Is it like Ketchup Boy? See, if we were gonna make like a loot game, if we wanted to make like a co-op superhero game, there are so many superhero teams you could. Not that they're limited to DC, right? So I don't know what the fuck is DC. Is Batman? What, you got Superman? I don't know. See, if they had access to some Marvel franchises, we could have gotten the Power Pack video game we've deserved for all of these years. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. They're making a new Suicide Squad game. Or I guess they're making a Suicide Squad game. Is it the first Suicide Squad? Will Smith was in the Suicide Squad movies, right? I don't know. The Super Mario Brothers movie has changed its release date And I didn't realize that they had announced this release date, because I would have, if I had looked at a calendar, I would have said, that's not the day this movie is coming out. It has changed from April 7th to April 5th. It has moved up 2 days. April 7th is a Sunday. And April 5th is a Friday. Movies come out on Fridays. Movies do not come out on Sundays. So an announced date of April 7th seems like someone fucked up looking at, like, how does that happen? Like, what, like, the entire movie business is built around the idea of what was your opening weekend. And you have movies opening earlier now to try to extend and fudge their opening weekend totals. And so I'm gonna double check here. Yes, April 7th. I'm sorry, I'm looking at May. Did I fuck this whole thing up? Did I fuck? Okay. Okay, so what they did is they moved to Wednesday. Okay, so this is what they're doing then. In May, the 7th is a Sunday. Okay. So they're moving to the Wednesday. Wednesday is the other opening day for movies. Especially nowadays, this whole thing is done because movies are trying to extend their opening weekend. It used to be, and this is like borderline racist, but maybe nothing borderline about it. Wednesday openings would happen for black films. It would happen for gangster movies. If there was a movie that movie companies, movie theaters thought that were maybe like, there might be violence at this screening of this, I don't know, this movie might be, they would open it on a Wednesday. And so I used to deliver movies to a movie theater chain. And so I would have to go on Thursdays to go and pick up films. We would drive hours down to Union City, California, and we would pick up movies in gigantic metal cans. We would throw them into the back of a Bronco, and we would drive them back up to Petaluma. And then the movie theaters, it was like a 5-theater chain, 6-theater, whatever it was. They would all come to the Petaluma location because it was most centrally located to pick up their movies. And then they would go back, they would build the movies up on platters and whatever, and they would have them running. And so occasionally you would have these Wednesday openings. You'd be like, oh, we have to go down an extra day this week because we have to get this. Or sometimes the Wednesday opening would come early, and so you would have it. Technically, you could have opened the Friday before, but it was held until the following Wednesday. And so that was how that's just how movie distribution worked. The whole thing was built around the idea of Friday. And then you had more and more of these Wednesday movies happening. And again, like it just always seemed the movies that would get chosen, quote unquote, to open on Wednesday, you saw that pattern emerge pretty quickly. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Why is a Wednesday movie? And you'd be like, oh, because we don't want gang shootings in the theater. Like, fuck you. What? It's less likely that there'll be violence in the theater if it's on a Wednesday night than a Friday night. And it just always seemed like and it was an industry-wide thing. This wasn't like something that like theater owners decided like on their own, like, oh, we're going to play this movie on what, but it was something that like, I guess, whether they partnered up to think about it or whatever it was, but like, yes, there was always there's going to be a shooting in the theater if we put this out on a Friday night. You know how they get, just like the fucking grossest shit. And that has subsided over time. Over the years, you saw more and more bigger movies opening on a Wednesday, and at that point, it was like a business trick. Like they realized, like, oh, if we open a movie on Wednesday, word of mouth will be thick by Friday. Also, we can talk about our like 5-day total or 4-day total or whatever the fuck it is. Yes, exactly. Nowadays, you can get shot any day of the week in any theater. Sure, why not? Steel Night. Yeah. So, yes, that whole thing to me always had roots in full-on racism when it came to the Wednesday opening. And so I guess this means you won't get shot at a screening of the Super Mario. No, they're moving it up to Wednesday. This seems to me, again, like them trying to have a larger opening weekend, a larger 4-day total, a larger, whatever. The business of movies is fucking stupid. I don't know. The whole movie theater. And so and you may have heard me talk over the years about how I think movie theaters are fucking stupid and need to go away. It's because I spent a lot of time seeing them very up close. I was just like, I just don't think this is cool. I don't think this is this is not a great way to see a movie. This is not, I don't know, man. This whole thing just seems like it sucks. As much as I like shitty food, and believe me, that I like shitty food. Man, look at me. I love shitty food. Movie theater hot dogs? Fuck yeah. I like movie theater popcorn. It's fine. That's about it, though. I'm not buying. It's the candy bars and all the weird. Those things are. When they mark up the shitty here's a little cardboard box with like 5 Mike and Ikes in it. It's $9. Get fucked. But yeah, I like shitty nachos. I love fucking hot dogs off the rollers. One of the greatest things about, so I didn't actually work at the movie theater much. There was a, God, I don't know, let's call it a 3-week period where I actually put on a button-up shirt and clip-on tie and fucking took tickets and served people food and stuff. And I was like, I fucking hate this. But like being around the movie theaters and delivering movies and having, like that was the entire social scene that I was a part of, was largely centered on that movie theater and the people who worked there. And it was one of those situations where everyone dates everybody, and just it was like working at a mall. It was like working at a whatever. It was like that sort of scene. My first long-term girlfriend managed one of those movie theaters. Anyway, and so that gave me a great number of opportunities to eat a lot of those hot dogs, because at the end of the night, they were just going to throw them away. And so if you're there at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that, and there's fucking 3 hot dogs on the rollers, I'm sitting there going like, yeah. No one's going to come out and buy these hot dogs. No one's going to come out and buy these hot dogs. They've been on these rollers for like 9 hours. They're perfect. I love those fucking things. And so, yeah, I would get me some nice, wrinkly, fucked up, just some fucked up fucking roller ass hot dogs that have been on there just a little bit too long. Like, yeah, this is, oh man, I'm getting all worked up just talking about it. So yeah, I don't know. Movie theaters, I think, are kind of gross, but like also like such an ingrained part of some portion of suburban culture. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but yeah, hanging out around the movie theater, all that shit. But I don't know. It always seemed like a bad way to see a movie, but like a good place to hang out and play Samurai Showdown 2. So let's see. IO Interactive has announced another project. They put up a blog post saying, a new adventure begins at IOI. Join the party and help us realize our vision for a bold new online fantasy RPG. So this seems like them looking for, they're hiring. This seems like they announced one of those announcements driven by them needing to hire up. And they're working on a Bond game, right? They're doing, so I presumably the main kind of chunk of people at IO Interactive is working on the Bond game, but they actually do kind of nod to like, this blog post is very top level. It doesn't really get into what they're making all that much, but it does say IO Interactive now spans multiple distinct studios from Copenhagen, and Malmo in the north to warm Barcelona in the south. All studios take part in making all of our games, including this new endeavor. People from all over the world with diverse personalities and skill sets are coming together to forge a new beginning. And so, you know, they're a big studio now. They have a lot of locations, and so it's not just about them making the Bond game. It's about like, hey, the Bond game is probably well underway, and so maybe they've got time to start kind of specking out what else they want to do. And it sounds like what else they want to do is make a bold new online fantasy RPG. Can I pick up like a thing? Can I like pick up a thing of mead and lock in on? Can I just have it curve around a corner and hit a guy in the head? Can we have Hitman? Can we just make medieval Hitman? That would be a bold, actual, but bold new on, and then that's the player versus player. I don't know. Let's see here. Now we're sharing this with all of you that we are embarking on a new adventure, one that expands our creativity, our capabilities, and in some sense our identity. We're building a new world, a new IP, an online fantasy RPG. A world and a game built from the core to entertain players and expand for many years to come. It feels familiar, yet at the same time, IO Interactive is going on a journey unlike any we have been on before. And just this and what, mini ninjas, right? For many, this journey is also a deeply personal one that began long before we started making games for a living. It started with the fantasy genre. Yeah, so they're kind of, you know, talking about like, hey, some people here have always liked fantasy stuff. We don't just like modern murdering. For some, it meant taking the role of game master, part storyteller, part AI opponent, part guide, part villain. For everyone around that table, it meant creativity, imagination, building a world together, and a shared goal in creating a great game experience. That idea is what inspires us. It inspires the fantasy world we are building, and it inspires how we build it. So kind of just nodding to just like, you know, tabletop RPG stuff a little bit here as well. I don't know how much that figures into what this game actually is, but this is just the start of our journey into this new world we are making. We hope you sense the warmth, the danger, the togetherness, and the heart we put into it. And if you do, we would be honored if you join us. And then a link to the careers page, and then a form to meet them at GDC. So it seems like they're looking to hire up to make this project start moving. And yes, meet us at GDC. Sign up for a chat. So if you want to talk to IO Interactive and you're in San Francisco, they've literally got a form. What's your current title? What company do you work at? Is what they want to know on their form. First and last name, email address, current title, and what company are you currently at? Is the thing they want to know if you want to meet with them at GDC. And they have lead online network programmer, senior gameplay animator, lead animator, senior product manager. And they've got project names listed with this. Those are all on Project Fantasy. They also have something called Project 007. I don't know what that could be. But they're looking for a senior sound designer and a character artist on that, and a senior gameplay animator. And then there's something called Backbone, animation tech programmer. I assume that's just the engine, right? Build engineer, senior audio programmer. So a more central role on the backbone of IO Interactive. Good on them. You know, good on IO Interactive for getting to a point where they've got like another thing going even, you know, that's cool. That studio feels like it really kind of went through the ringer with the square, you know, with the, yeah, like the idea that IO Interactive was able to get out and go independent again and have the Hitman IP and be able to wrangle all of this stuff and you know, some of the stuff they've done to Hitman recently even is pretty awesome. And that Hitman trilogy, the World of Assassination, the single game that is referred to now, I guess, instead of a trilogy of games, is an outstanding work. It is like an amazing multi-year, like decades. They say 7 years. What did they say? Yeah. 7 years ago, we launched that world in its infancy and nurtured it to grow to comprise 3 full games. And it launched 7 years ago. Fuck. It has now been a decade since we first imagined creating a new World of Assassination. That's fucking wild. That's really crazy. That Hitman, I mean, obviously Hitman is older than that, but I mean, modern, current Hitman is such an amazing thing. Speaking as someone who I'd never really liked the older Hitman games. You know, they just never, they just felt canned in a way to me, in a negative sense, which is weird because I would say that there are aspects of the current Hitman game that I would also refer to as canned, but in the best possible way. You know, that is the clockwork nature of modern Hitman is part of what makes it sing, right? And it's awesome. You know, they survived having multiple companies publish different parts of that trilogy and just navigating all the rights issues and all that other shit to come out the other side of it and say, look at this thing we spent a decade on. And by the way, it's one of the best things in games to happen over the past 10 years. That's fucking wild. It's Hitman. Hitman that existed for years before, had its fans before all this, that kind of went dormant, came back. I don't know that I don't remember original Hitman fans being all that big on new Hitman when it first happened. Because those Hitman fans were bad people. And then obviously the work that IO Interactive did before that is well-worn territory, I suppose. But yeah, what a studio. What a crazy ride that it must have been to be there for all that time and working on all that stuff. That's really wild. So good on them for branching out, doing something else, and not just, you know, as much as I want to see the Bond game, because I think like that seems like a dream partnership, I guess, like a match, a really solid match for like what I think I want out of a James Bond game is like espionage and weirdness, and like the nature of that Hitman game feels like it's the right bones to kind of not turn into Bond per se, but to think about when it's like, well, okay, we have all this stuff, can we apply it to a James Bond game? I bet there's a lot of cool shit. Yeah, I don't know, because like for me, James Bond as a first-person shooter always seemed like very limiting to the, you know, what James Bond is, right? What is the character? What does the character do? He does spy shit. He doesn't walk around with a pistol and go, you know, like the was it Everything or Nothing was like the last like good Bond game. One of the few good Bond games, I guess I would actually say. That and 007 Racing, you know, really tapping into what makes James Bond James Bond. Ugh. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see, man. It's yeah, I'm not even like a huge James Bond fan or anything. Like I think I've seen, let's say, a third to half of the James Bond movies and been like, yeah, these are fun, but I'm not like some big Bond guy. But like the idea of IO Interactive making a James Bond game feels like such a perfect fit to me. I'm really interested to see what that ends up being. We'll see. Also in the news, we talked a little bit about this last week, and this story in some ways feels like it is very underdeveloped, and also feels like now this is happening in a way that feels a little strange. The Ukrainian government is trying to ban Atomic Heart from digital stores in Ukraine. And this comes from Eurogamer. Alex Bornyakov, Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation, plans to send an official letter to Sony, Microsoft, and Valve to request the ban. And this is coming on the back of the controversies that have been surrounding Atomic Heart for months now. But I guess the statement here is almost like this guy in Ukraine read the same news article that I read. And so like I feel like there's still some dots I'm waiting to see connected here. But the Bornykov's statement was given to dev.ua, and then an English version was obtained by PC Games N. Anyway, regarding the situation with the release of the game Atomic Heart, which has Russian roots and romanticizes communist ideology and the Soviet Union, the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine will send an official letter to Sony, Microsoft, and Valve requesting a ban on selling digital versions of the game in Ukraine. We also urge limiting the distribution of this game in other countries due to its toxicity, potential data collection of users, and potential use of money raised from game purchases to conduct a war against Ukraine. And so that is the actual part, because that has been the stuff over the last few weeks, has been like, hey, there is, and so he goes on. According to media reports, the game's development was funded by Russian enterprises. Therefore, we call for all users worldwide to avoid this game. We want to emphasize that the game developers have not publicly condemned the Putin regime and the bloody war that Russia has unleashed against Ukraine. And so there have been reports that the game's studio is like funded by like Gazprom, like that there's like Russian oligarchs at the top of this funding this game, and that the money maybe very directly goes back into the coffers being used to fight this war. But it's been kind of one article that the dev is kind of refuted, but not refuted, but sort of, hey, like, we're not making a political statement, has been the most that they have said. And so it's, there was an early version of an EULA on their website that implied that they were able to give user data over to the FSB, which is kind of the modern version of the KGB, if you're not. That seems like the best way to phrase that, I guess. And so there's a bunch of dirty, weird shit swirling around Atomic Heart that hasn't necessarily been refuted one way or the other, or confirmed one way or the other, I suppose. And I guess to me the weird thing about this is that the quote from Bornyakov, who again is the Ukraine's Minister of Digital Transformation, is saying, according to media reports, the game's development was funded by Russian enterprises. And to me, that says that he read the same thing that I read, which puts it right out there and says, hey, this is what's happening. But it's like such a weird source that I feel like no one reputable has tracked down and said, yes, this is definitive. Yes, this is definitely happening. Instead, it's like a lot of, it's been people saying to the studio, hey, have you seen this? And the studio going like, yeah, that's not, we're not making a political game. And like their responses have been really mushy. And that has not helped. And so that has led to more of this stuff swirling around Atomic Heart. I don't know what to think about it. It's obviously, if this game is being, if money from this game is going out there to then fund, if money from this game is going back to Russia, and then that money is potentially being used to fund a war in Ukraine, then you look at this and go, yeah, that's fucked. That's fucking what? Why would anyone buy that? This is an awful situation. But it feels like the dots have not been connected in a satisfying enough way just yet. And yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing. This was something that I saw about a month before the game came out, and was like, that doesn't seem great. What the hell's going on there? Let's wait and see what happens with this. Like, hey, anyone, you heard about this? And there's a lot of people going like, yeah, no, I heard about that, but like, I don't know, like this website is a weird thing on top of that. So yeah, I don't know. There's a big mess around it. Also, there are like weird robots in the game that have hairstyles very similar to a leader of a Ukrainian political party, and it's just. There's a bunch of old cartoons in the game. I don't know if a bunch, but there's some old cartoons, some old Soviet era cartoons in the game that have racist imagery. The studio did apologize for that. Like, we're taking that out. All this other stuff, they're like, yeah. So that's a, I don't even know. I guess I would call it an interesting situation, a fucking mess, somewhere between the two. And I'm curious to see how that all pans out. I don't know if anyone, like, I'm not equipped to do the legwork on that and figure out, what the, like if the head of this, if this is true, if the funding for this game did come along with all of that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Yes, a lot of baggage with that game. Also, I don't know, qualitatively, it doesn't sound like the game is especially good. I don't know. I don't think that figures into all of the other stuff we're talking about one way or the other. But it's a weird. It's weird. EA has been sending out some surveys. This is according to Eurogamer. They want to know, hey, do you think, what about, hey, do you like that Dead Space? You think about that? What do you think about that Dead Space? And then literally have 2 questions in a survey. How interested would you be in a similar remake of Dead Space 2? How interested would you be in a similar remake of Dead Space 3? Yeah, they should remake all of Dead Space. They've got the tech, they definitely did a really good job with this first one. And I think that they should continue on that track. They should remake the other Dead Space games and then maybe make a new one at the, I don't know, man. But, interesting that they would still be asking that. I mean, I don't know. It feels like the reception to this Dead Space remake has been awesome. And I would look at it and think like, yeah, you should obviously keep going with this. I would like to see them do more and more to them, I guess, as time goes on. That might be fun, but even if they kind of kept them at this level, that might still be good. And also, Dead Space 3, see, people in chat are saying like, oh, Dead Space 3 is kind of bad. Yeah, well, fix it. That's the whole point. That's the best point about a remake, right? Is like, hey, what if you made good on all that stuff? Like, Dead Space 3 is not necessarily a bad game. It just was weird. Like, the direction it went in with like loot and resources and some of the other stuff there was maybe just the wrong move. This would be a really good time for them to take Dead Space 3, either rip all of that stuff out or find ways to make it right. But like, man, could you imagine if the finale of the Dead Space trilogy was instead something you felt good about, instead of something you were like, man, they sure did microtransact the F out of that game to a point where it was clear that they were not going to make another one. We talked about it before. The Dead Space franchise happened at a very awkward time in EA's lifespan. And by awkward, I mean a really kind of consumer unfriendly era over there. This is, not that different. This is not that far removed from the time when they were like fighting against used games by trying to charge people $10 for an online pass. They figured out ways to put multiplayer into Mass Effect so that they could charge for blind boxes. By the time we got to Dead Space 3, there was, like, oh, what if we had resources and you could buy resource double, like whatever it was they were selling around that stuff. And Dead Space 3 kind of got sucked into that whole mess because EA as a company was trying to hit different types of home runs back then than they are now, because the industry, they were very focused on like, we've got to have massive launches with really long tails. And so we've got to not only find a way to launch a big thing, but we want it to be a multiplayer thing that people play for 6 months and keep giving us money every single week for whatever the fuck it is we're selling. They would love to do that. They would love to still do that, I'm sure. But, the industry is a little bit different, and they are maybe not going to look to Dead Space to try to make those numbers, because that's a ridiculous concept. And so, yeah, I think there, obviously Dead Space 2 is a great game already. Yeah, polish it up, put it out, sure. Dead Space 3, I would love to see some more thought put into that. And like, hey, this is, they could easily make a better game if they remade Dead Space 3, in a few years, right after Dead Space 2 comes out, right? They could really sit down and go like, okay, well, these are systems that don't really need to be in this game. These are systems that don't really add to the story that we're telling. They don't really flesh out the universe in fun ways. It's not a good gameplay experience. It's not a good user experience. So we can replace this with something else and find different ways to, whether it's take the loot out of it, take the, the resources out of it, like all of that, just get rid of that stuff and focus on something else. I think that might be a better way to go. Yeah, keep the crafting in, make it super broken and fun, says M Bowles 2814. Sure, yeah, why not? I think that like they really did a good job with that remake, and I would love to see them do the whole trilogy. If not, but like, I guess like what you would hope to get to is a new one, right? A Dead Space 4 or something. So if you're going to remake Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3, that's going to take a while. And do you think people have the appetite? Or you think at the end of a remade Dead Space trilogy, will people have an appetite for a fourth game? A new game? So I almost wonder, that's like what, how long would it take? Like a minimum of 4 years if they took 2 years per game? And even that's not guaranteed. Like, you want Dead Space 4 in 2027, 2028? No. So as interested as I might be in remakes of Dead Space 2 and 3, there's some weird part of me that is almost like, make another Dead Space and make a sequel to the Dead Space remake that just came out, but make it an entirely different thing and be like, oh, by the way, it's a reboot now. I don't know. Like I'd almost rather they do that just to get off of the remake track and get into making new stuff, like that might be more interesting or something. Or hey, they make Dead Space 2 as a faithful remake, and then Dead Space 3 ends up being a completely different scenario, or like they do something completely different with it. Like they do much more than just fix some of the inventory whatever stuff and instead make it, whether it's more open-ended to lead to a fourth game or what have you, like do something dramatically different with Dead Space 3. That might be something they could do. I don't know. What the fuck do I know? I'm just sitting here, man. E3 is coming, whether you want it to or not. Nintendo has confirmed that they will not be going to E3. They've given a statement to VentureBeat confirming that they will not have a presence on the show floor at E3 2023. The statement is, or I don't know if this is the full statement, but the bit of the statement that VentureBeat has is, we approach our involvement in any event on a case-by-case basis and are always considering various ways to engage with our fans. Since this year's E3 show didn't fit into our plans, we have made the decision to not participate. However, we have been and continue to be a strong supporter of the ESA and E3. You will remember, this was like last month or something now, that IGN had the story saying that Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft would not be a part of E3. And so, this is, I feel like this is kind of full confirmation of that entire report, really, because I think it's kind of a no-brainer that Sony wouldn't be there. Sony had been out of E3 for a bit now. Microsoft is maybe a bit of the weird one in terms of, if asked, Phil Spencer will always tell you that he is a strong supporter of the ESA and he's on the board, like all of that. And so there's an interest in having a strong E3 for the industry, and that's kind of been his stance. But that's the last time I talked to him about that was when there was still an E3, so it's been a while. So yeah, no Nintendo at E3, and this doesn't mean that they won't have statements this summer, right? In fact, it would be weird if they didn't. I think that this is, again, they are just very timidly looking at the year and saying, we don't need to go to this physical show. We don't think that's going to be a necessary move. Maybe the ESA, I mean, you know, the ESA's pitch for what this show has been feels like it has been, without seeing it firsthand, it doesn't sound like it's been the strongest pitch in the world. And if you're a company who's like already got a direct pipeline to your fan base, to your customers, then you don't really need to go to E3. Like, you know, what are you going to get out of the public days of E3? Like, hey, we got our game in front of 80,000 people who live around the Los Angeles area. Like, okay, would they have known about it anyway? Almost certainly. Well, then what did we spend that money for? I don't know. So, you know, the value of E3 as a public show is weird. Nintendo already generates, like, I'm sure Nintendo is looking at their social media numbers. They're looking at all of the stuff, right? They're looking at how, you know, they can announce a live stream and say like, hey, in 2 days we're going to do a thing and we're going to announce some games and it'll be 45 minutes and it'll be fine. But it's not going to have any of this other shit. It's going to be the first half, you know, they have to focus it and say this, and people show up in droves. The news gets out there. Everyone reports on the news. The same as if it happened at E3. It just doesn't matter for a company the size of Nintendo. They can announce whatever they want, whenever they want, and the information gets out there. Period. So they just don't need to do it. And so they're not. And I don't think, you know, like, this isn't necessarily like they're not saying our lineup was weak. There was some report. I don't know if this came out of the IGN story, or if this was kind of like people rumor mongering around it of like, oh, the lineup wasn't there, and so they didn't have, like, bullshit. If Nintendo wanted to fucking gin up a bunch of trailers for stuff and show it in June, they could, and they probably will. Maybe July. Who knows? It's never about like, oh, Nintendo's lineup is weak. Like, fuck, man, you know. They could just show the Metroid Prime 4 logo again and people would go, all is forgiven. It's Nintendo, for Christ's sake. So what does that mean for E3? Not much, really. And then, yeah, so this is, just to be clear, Bright Lord Apollo asks, wait, this is about them putting stuff on the floor and not trailers, right? Yeah, they're not going to be at the show. Means they're not going to have a physical presence at the show, and they're not going to have a press conference that is allotted by the ESA. They're not going like, hey, we want to have an E3 press conference. Because they don't need to ask for that permission. A company of that size doesn't need, they can go like, oh, well, we're just going to do a live stream on this day. And if you want to call it part of Summer Games Jam Hot Party Zone, like for whatever your publication is doing, like fucking whatever. This is when we're announcing our shit. You should show up and see it. And so, you know, when IGN does the IGN Summer Hot Party and GameSpot's E3 Fuck Zone, or, you know, whatever is going on, that's not some big exclusive, you know, it's just like, hey, we needed to come up with a brand to write on the website, to have this section of the website devoted to whatever this is, and we can't just call it E3 anymore because there's too much stuff that happens outside of E3. And so everyone came up with their own weird branding for it. Keighley actually went out and did something about it, instead of like, hey, it's the Summer Game Fest. And I'm talking to companies about getting them to kind of participate in it. Even if some of those companies are like, we were going to do this event anyway. If you want to say it's a part of Summer Game Fest, be my fucking guest. Fine. So it's all this weird murky thing, like what is E3, what isn't E3? It doesn't matter. You know, like, will Nintendo announce games in the summer? I bet they will. I bet they absolutely will. They just didn't need to go to a convention in LA to do it. They didn't need to work with a trade organization who would tell them when they could have their press conference to do it. They just say, fuck it, we'll call our own shots. I don't know if you noticed, we're Nintendo. I turn these cameras on, people show up. We're Nintendo. Like, hey guys, Zelda just came out last month. Do you want to see what else we're working on? You do? Great, I'll turn the camera on. We'll do something. They're Nintendo. They don't need to go to the ESA and say, oh, Monday? We're going to do it Monday? Okay, well, when's everyone else going? Oh, we're going to do Monday? Okay, yeah. Just doesn't need to happen that way. And so, it doesn't make sense for Nintendo to be there. Unless they want to be, unless they believe in, the rising tide, lift all ships, if they believe in the show, if they wanted to be a better partner to their third parties, then they would go to E3, because I think that when these big publishers pull out, it means less eyeballs on the stuff that is at E3 and less eyeballs on the live streams that are a part of E3. And I think it makes it slightly more difficult for some of the smaller third parties to get their stuff out there. But I don't know that Nintendo's presence at E3 would actually impact those live stream numbers one way or the other, right? It's hard to say. But the actual physical show, I'm excited to go. I signed up for it yesterday. Literally, I was like, oh, they're taking signups? Like, I saw people posting pictures of like, I got my confirmation email for E3. I was like, oh, right. I guess all my contact information has changed. I'm not just going to automatically get a badge anymore. I guess I gotta fill out a form, huh? Fuck, shit. Well, I definitely want to go to that thing. So I went and filled that out. Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Nintendo doesn't need E3. Period. Nothing E3 has to offer, especially with what this show is sounding like in terms of having private days and public days and whatever else. I don't think any of it necessarily does anything that Nintendo can't do themselves. The bulk of Nintendo's coverage, I bet the bulk of the numbers, if you go back to 2019, go back to the last 3 years of in-person E3, I bet you could say that the overwhelming majority of eyeballs that look at Nintendo related news do so on what Nintendo is putting out, not on articles that were generated at E3. Like, oh, this interview I did at E3. Because a lot of that is the press rewriting, here's what happened at the Nintendo press conference. And those are always the biggest stories. And you can still write those stories if they run a live stream, turns out. You don't need to be in Los Angeles to do that. In fact, a lot of publications were leaving news teams at the home base and not having them go to LA so that they could just write up press conference stuff from there. So... And that's going to be more, like the hands-on story about like, if they have new hardware, sure. If there was like, here's a new thing we want you to touch and report on, then yeah, then you do a bigger, then maybe you have a bigger reason to go to the show if you're Nintendo. But if you're not, then it's like, whatever. People are going to say like, I played the new Pokemon game. All right, cool. I watched the trailer on it and the treehouse thing. And so I'm good. Like your 400-word write-up on what the A button doesn't matter the way it used to. It just doesn't. The relevance of the traditional media in terms of this cycle, it's just not what it was. I'm sad about that, I guess, to a certain extent, as someone who spent a lot of time focusing on covering E3 one way or the other, doing my write-ups, staying up all night in a hotel room, writing those 400 to 800 word hands-ons about what the A button did and whether it ran good or not, even though it doesn't matter because those are preview builds of games. Yeah, it is what it is. It's a different world now. The internet got better. The internet got faster and everyone bought a camera. It used to be that Nintendo was like, we don't have a I don't know. We don't know how to do all that. Like, so if you guys want to come in here with cameras, if you guys, and then it was like, okay, we've got cameras and we're going to just provide you a feed. So you show up with a thing that can capture our feed and you'll get the exact same thing that's getting streamed out, and you can stream it out. We'll have internet at the venue. Or, hey, bring a satellite truck to the venue so you can beam it out. The ways that covering E3 press conferences has evolved and changed over the years is really crazy too. But, you know, over the last decade, everyone said like, oh, well, we'll just produce it ourselves. We don't need to like put on this big show just for the people in the room and then let GameSpot and IGN and I don't know what game trailers did they do live E3? I don't know. Would 1UP do it? I assume they did. I don't know. And let you guys come in and do the live streams so that you guys get all the traffic and you guys get all the whatever. Instead, everyone at some point was like, oh, we'll just do it ourselves. And then suddenly it was like, oh, can we rebroadcast it on our website? No. Or yeah, I guess you can, but don't touch the feed, or here we're going to send you details for the stream and you just use our stream. Don't show up and broadcast it out yourselves. We'll handle that. And so everyone just, you know, that's just how it moved. And suddenly all the publishers were just kind of running their own live streams, and you were like, oh, well, I can get a drop. I can get a URL for this. There were years when we were in the hotel doing our night show stuff that we were getting. Well, we would watch GameSpot's feed most of the time because we would get direct links to, like, they would give us whatever links to whatever their drop was. And so we weren't just watching the public-facing GameSpot feed. We were like one hop closer. So we were hopefully less out of sync with real time, and watching some back-end fucking CDN link or something. I forget. And half the time that wouldn't work, and we would just watch their fucking Twitch channel. I forget. But yeah, it was I don't know. Nintendo, in short, Nintendo doesn't need to go to E3. Why would they? They reach you directly now. It's right in the name, Nintendo Direct. It's not Nintendo Direct to IGN to you. It's not Nintendo Direct to PC Games N to you. It's Nintendo Direct. They push play on the tape and you watch it. Just like the media that got pre-briefed on it the day before. That was the other thing, is I never actually went to any of the pre-brief for Nintendo. But you would always you always run into a reporter who had been there like the day before, and they were like, oh yeah, I watched the whole thing. Yeah, they're announcing this, they're showing this is Star Fox. I don't know, it looks fucked up. You're like, all right, well. And so it was literally they would get the media in the room that they invited to the pre-brief and then just push play on a tape so that they could watch it a day early and write their notes under embargo and then run their stories the next day. Which is like, fine, it's of course, right? But like, they don't even need to do that. Who cares if the press has pre-brief stories? They'll write the stories anyway. We just don't matter anymore that way. we. I don't even know. Am I even part of that conversation? Who the fuck knows? It's a mess. Nintendo won't be there, but you know who will be? Ubisoft. Wait, where did that link go? I must have deleted the link that Ubisoft said they were going there. And I had that story in my document, and now it's not there anymore, and I don't know. So now I need to figure this out. Ubisoft has given a statement to this is from last week that they confirmed this. Yeah, okay, that's why it's not in here, because we talked about it last week. Ubisoft, makers of The Crew. They are going to be at the show. This is basically like there was a statement from Yves Guillemot that sounded a little wishy-washy on the like, oh, if E3 happens, we will be there. And then E3 was like, well, E3 is definitely happening. I don't know what you heard. No. And then they were like, oh yeah, we'll be there. So it was like kind of a weird sort of thing here. When asked for clarification, Ubisoft told GamesIndustry.biz, E3 is a special moment for our industry, and we are excited to showcase our strong lineup in Los Angeles in June. We are still finalizing the details of our plans and look forward to sharing more soon. So So yeah, they will be there with, I guess, the games they haven't canceled yet. So we'll see what they did. Like I saw some stories over the past couple of days that were claiming that there were like 1,000 more Assassin's Creed games in development, which that feels like a weird way to go. It felt like we were taking a break from Assassin's Creed, and that we were maybe like putting a lot of add-on content into Assassin's Creed, so that it didn't have to be a new game every year or a new game every 2 years or whatever it was. And now it just feels like there are 1,000 Assassin's Creed games, and every time I read the differences between them, I just kind of shake my head and go like, I don't The head of the studio speaking of Ubisoft, the head of the studio running the Beyond Good and Evil 2 development is no longer at the studio. It sounds like that there was maybe that he had not been there from the start of the year. That person had not been at the studio. They confirmed like, that guy ain't coming back. He's a bad man. It sounded like they were maybe saying. And that there's an investigation going on there talking about burnout and extended sick time, and just like that over the last year, the people working on Beyond Good and Evil 2 have been having a rough go of it, potentially at the hands of this person. And then so they are looking into all of that. There must be like some like hidden nugget in the Beyond Good and Evil 2 pitch deck, or what, there's something somewhere that they must have that they have not shown publicly that keeps that game from getting canceled, right? Is it Yves Guillemot in like a naked, like what do they have? Do they have nudes of the entire executive team and they're like, don't cancel our game? Like I don't, or is it just like, this monkey looks great and you're gonna play as this monkey? Like I don't, like what is it about this pitch? What is it about Beyond Good and Evil 2 that keeps them from canceling it at a time when they're canceling so many other games? Is this just is it a bad money after good money? They just keep flushing? Like what are we doing? What is happening? Why is this happening? It feels like Ubisoft feels like it is so off track. Yeah, and I'm sure it's because they just latched on to whatever the hot thing was, and they probably migrated directly from Joseph Gordon-Levitt tells me that kids are going to write the soundtrack to this game for free to, hey man, what about NFTs? Like, it has to be an NFT game now, right? Like, it must be. They must be pinning every single hope they have on the NFT space in this game, right? I just... Yeah, exactly. Yes, Pat, AI NPCs. Like, just last week, I'm sure someone went like, what if it had AI? And someone went, what do you mean it has AI? No, I mean, like, what if it had AI? And they said it enough times to where someone went like, oh, right. Yeah. That's how we'll keep from getting canceled. We have a really good focus. We've been reaching out to the OpenAI people. We're talking about ChatGPT integration. This monkey talks. When this monkey says racist things, it's because some other AI engine told it to. Isn't that awesome? I don't know. But I don't, again, I'm no businessman, but the idea that game is still in some form of existence at a time when the company is canceling all the, and maybe the other games are just straight up bad ideas. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, all these amazing canceled games, maybe they're terrible. Who knows? I don't fucking know. I know they were running more X-Defiant tests recently. Presumably Skull and Bones will come out someday and we can all move on with our lives. They did say that crew game was coming, I guess, right? I don't like that studio feels like studio nothing. That the entire company, Ubisoft, just feels like it is adrift right now. I don't understand what that company used to feel like it would, like, oh well, you may not like that they keep kind of making Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed style open world games, but they see it seems to work for them. You would look at it and go like, well, I don't necessarily love all these games, but I guess it makes sense for them to. I guess it makes sense for them to move in this direction. To now, it just feels like very all over the place. I'm sure a lot of that is, the pandemic, and a lot of that is the studio culture and people being up in arms about the way that company's being run and everything there. But I don't know. It just feels. I don't know. Trackmania is the last Ubisoft game I feel good about, and that game's 3 years old or something now. That means if you got a 3-year subscription to Trackmania back when it launched, it's going to be up this summer. Keep that in mind. Konami might show up at E3. That's the rumor, according to the Video Games Chronicle podcast, which they just started. They've had one episode, and I'm going to be on their second episode later this week. So that's, I believe, going to hit Thursday. It's not been recorded yet, but I am due to be a guest on that podcast very soon. Anyway, they are making the claim on that podcast that Konami is looking to go big, whatever that means. Well, the suggestion is that Konami will have a major booth at E3, and that they will be looking to show a new Castlevania game. This is being filtered through IGN India, I guess, here, because I have not had time to listen to the podcast myself. The Metal Gear Solid 3 remake is also name dropped in here as something that may potentially show up there. And yeah, I don't know. It seems like I don't know what a new Castlevania game would. Konami. I don't know what Konami is anymore. No one does. Konami doesn't know what. But that Metal Gear remake, the MGS3 remake has been, I feel like mentioned out loud enough times now that it seems like that is going down. But a new Castlevania game, I guess. I don't know. What do you do at that point? Obviously, the Silent Hill stuff is what it is. They talked about all that. The Video Games Chronicle podcast was not entirely sure about what was up with the other remakes, or potentially remaking additional Metal Gear Solid games, which is something that Konami had talked about. I want to say on social media, were they taking votes or something? It was when they were like, "Hey, this game went offline temporarily. We're looking to bring it back, and we all have other news for bringing stuff back in the future." I don't know. Konami is such a strange thing these days. But if you were going to make video games at Konami, I think it would make the most sense to capitalize on your biggest franchises. And so remaking MGS3, boy, it'd be nice if they remade it in a way that made it playable for once, right? Wouldn't it be nice if MGS3 was actually a good game? If they actually made it fun to engage with in any way, shape, or form, instead of it being the absolute worst fucking Metal Gear Solid game of all of the Metal Gear Solid games. God. Let's spend another hour in a menu fucking figuring out the camo just right. Fuck that. Fuck that game. Oh my God. Worst. The worst. So, like we talked about with Dead Space 3, it would be really cool if they remade it in a way that made it actually fun. So let's hope. A new Castlevania game, who knows? I don't even like in my head, every Castlevania game should be a 2D game. It should be a Metroidvania, a Castlevania, if you will. But I think if Konami wants to make a major splash with a new Castlevania game, it probably ends up being some big 3D mess of a thing, right? Yes, Subsistence. When they the second release of MGS3 was a notably better game than the original release. And so imagine all these years later, if they were to make MGS3 again, the rest of the bullshit they could iron out of that experience and actually make it good. They got a lot closer with Subsistence. Anyway, I don't know what you do with Castlevania at this point. You know, the idea of a 3D action adventure or like a character action game, or you know, or whatever, doesn't not sound super engaging to me personally. But all right, this is actually what I'm about to suggest is actually really shitty, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to suggest it, because I think that like trying to just horn everything into this genre that is over full. But I mean, yeah, exactly. If you made a new Castlevania and made it in the From Software template, if you tried to make one of those games, but at the end you fight Dracula, and then like you just take all of the boss fights from Castlevania 1 and be like, here's fucking Frankenstein, but you had to walk through a fog door to fucking fight him. Castlevania Lord, it's not Lord of Shadows. Lord of Shadows is not is like a fucking weird mess. It's not. Those games were not actually good. So I'm sorry. It's not even, we're not even having a debate. Those are not good games. I don't care how much time you spend looking for fucking Zobek or whatever. Yeah, but I could see Konami, you know, because Konami doesn't ship a ton of games right now, right? It's could you? So I guess like I don't have a high opinion of Konami as a studio anymore, and so for me it's very easy to look at and go like, oh yeah, well they'll probably just knock off they'll probably just knock off Dark Souls and put a Belmont in it and do one of those, right? Like the Konami just feels like that type of B tier studio, B tier corporation these days. That you go like, oh yeah, they'll just cram it into this template and put it out. Also, they'll do it like 5 years too late. It'll just be depressing all around. But maybe not. I don't know. Like, what do you want out of a new Castlevania, really? Because to me, it is probably just a really good 2D Castlevania game. You know, that would be the thing that I would actually want, but I don't think that's I don't think that's that exciting to that many people. I think there's, you know, there's obviously like that'd be a big deal to people of a certain age, people that already play a lot of games. But I don't think that like if you like, let's say they actually did it and said, hey, we're making a new Castlevania game. What's it called? Symphony of the Night 2. You're like, okay, guys. Yeah, sure. Let's fucking go, I guess. Like that would be like fucking nuts. But even that, I think, is just a weird. Yeah, I don't know. What do you do with Castlevania? That's why instead they should remake Super C. Not even Contra 1. Not even Super Contra. Super C. Make a new Goemon game. I'm trying to think of what other like big Konami games, you know, like Gradius VR. I don't know. Bring back Rumble Roses. Yeah, sure. Sure. You know what? Sure. Bring back Rumble Roses, but get the TJPW license. How about that though? I don't know. It's yeah. Konami just feels so far removed from any kind of conversation Yes, Yuka Sakazaki on the cover of a Rumble Roses game. Yes. 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 Why wouldn't we do this? Anyway, I will be on the next episode of the, barring any sort of, I don't know, like barring any sort of weird chaos, I believe I will be on the next episode of the Video Games Chronicle podcast hitting later this week. So watch out for that, the VGC podcast. That'll be fun. Shinji Mikami is leaving Tango Gameworks, the studio that he founded and then sold to Bethesda. It's kind of weird timing in a weird way when you think about, like, hey, they just put out Hi-Fi Rush and there was like a game that he kind of didn't have a huge, maybe not the hugest part in or whatever. But anyway, Bethesda put out a statement. We can confirm that Shinji Mikami has decided to leave Tango Gameworks in the coming months. We thank him for his work as a creative leader and as a supportive mentor to young developers on the Evil Within franchise, Ghostwire Tokyo, and of course, Hi-Fi Rush. We wish Mikami-san well in the future and are excited by what lies ahead for the talented developers at Tango. This is, Shinji Mikami's been at it for a long time. It's not maybe the hugest surprise that he may be, kind of at the end of his run here. It's just, it's interesting timing, I guess, in the sense of, and maybe like perfect timing in a way, right? It almost seems like a situation where it's like he probably feels okay or a little bit more okay about stepping away if the studio is in a strong position kind of without him. Whereas Hi-Fi Rush, was his involvement was maybe not the most directly involved he has been with a game there. If I'm reading all of everything correctly, that seems like the way it went. If you remember the Microsoft event where they kind of announced and launched the game, it was really him kind of saying, hey, here's the dude, this is the guy. So it seems like the studio is being left in pretty good hands, I guess I would say. Maybe. As someone who likes a game that studio has published, and it is Hi-Fi Rush. I don't know. It's interesting timing, I guess I would say. And a new page potentially for the studio in terms of the types of games they are known for and the types of games they make, right? So, obviously there were some kind of hints and stuff about or references to their past work in Hi-Fi Rush that people are going like, is this an Easter egg meant to, is this the Evil Within 3? Or like, maybe, I don't know. I wonder if they will go back to either, I don't think they'll go back to Ghostwire Tokyo, but I wonder if they will go back to the Evil Within and make another one of those, or if they are going to kind of just become a different thing off the back of Hi-Fi Rush, if they're going to have a kind of wider remit to think about what they want to make next. I guess I just don't see the Evil Within franchise as being something that necessarily has to be continued. I know that there are people who like those games, maybe Evil Within 2 more than one. I don't know. And people are kind of mixed on which one of those games they like best, I guess. But I don't necessarily know that the world needs an Evil Within 3. So I don't know. If they feel that they have to like make good on the end of Evil Within 2 and then make another one of those to kind of close out the trilogy, then sure, I could see it. I guess I just, we'd have to go look at sales or something, right? Like, is the Evil Within franchise something that demands another sequel? Because you've made a couple of them now, you kind of have a good idea of the number of people that would be interested in the third one. You put out Ghostwire, which is not a good game. Beautiful in some ways, like some cool looking environments in Ghostwire Tokyo. But gosh, I was maybe not expecting a ton from it, but I still was somehow really disappointed with the way Ghostwire Tokyo played. Just a monotonous, dull, just not a good time. So Hi-Fi Rush, though, hell of a game. Hell of a game. And yeah, obviously, Shinji Mikami, Polygon's got a good write-up here off the announcement of this, that he started at Capcom in 1989, creating the first Resident Evil, and then made a lot of those and left in 2007 to go to Platinum, where he directed Vanquish. And then after that came out, he started Tango Gameworks, and they made The Evil Within 1 and 2, Ghostwire Tokyo, and now Hi-Fi Rush. An interesting, weird, it's like a lot of, there a lot of those classic Capcom developers are long gone in a variety of directions, whether it's Mikami or Inafune, and just but Capcom seems to be doing quite well lately. They've adapted, and I think in the end of the runs of some of these guys here, Capcom felt like it was kind of going off the rails a little bit. Like there was, we talk about like that, there was a while there that it just felt like Capcom was really on the fucking ropes, man. And there was a lot of talk about like, well, who's going to buy Capcom? Someone's got to buy Capcom because they are shitting the bed over and over again. Like it really, I don't think Lost Planet 3 is getting the job done, guys. That whole generation was really pretty rough there. They tried a lot of different stuff. Dark Void didn't get it done. I like Dark Void. That Bionic Commando remake didn't get it done, and I feel like I am the lone person on the planet who liked that game, but that's okay. It's not great. It's the invisible radiation, whatever, at the top of the screen was all fucked up, but that game had some ideas, obviously, and some real silly shit. That was real, yeah. Man. But I don't know, Capcom seems like, obviously, you go look at what they've done with Monster Hunter and figuring out ways to make that more appealing to a wider audience with Monster Hunter World. And, we'll see. I think Street Fighter 6 has a real chance to be a Street Fighter franchise. You heard of this thing? I think it's got a chance to be a big deal. Anyway, no, my point is I think Street Fighter 6 really has a good chance of being a much bigger deal than 5 was at launch. That it looks like something that can sell to a wider audience, that can break through, not entirely unlike the way what they had to do with Monster Hunter World, right? Because Monster Hunter obviously was wildly popular in Japan. It had its devoted fan base here in the West, but it was big up to a certain size. It was a big kind of niche game, if you will, and it never really broke through that. It was like, hey man, do you want to play a multiplayer PSP game? Fuck no. Like, okay, well, all right then. And Street Fighter V felt like this narrowing experience in a way, that over the course of that game's run, they spent a long time kind of trying to course correct. And, whatever. We're talking about a game that still sold millions of copies, but it didn't, Street Fighter V, not a cultural phenomenon. Street Fighter 4 probably was a bigger deal. But I wonder, we have to go look. I wonder what the sales lifetime on both those games ended up being. Because it may be that 5 ended up being a bigger thing, but like 4 brought it back. I think 4 you could probably look at as not saving fighting games, because that's a ridiculous concept, right? But I think 4 was a really big moment, not only for Street Fighter, but for the genre. It kind of put a flag down and said, fucking Street Fighter is back. And we found a new way forward. And I think a lot of other fighting games on that generation of consoles were able to exist largely because Street Fighter 4 kind of opened that door again. And 5 didn't need to do that because the door was already open, but at the same time 5 just felt like the wrong direction in so many ways. Whatever. We've talked to death about it. There's a few episodes of this podcast you can go listen to if you want to hear me talk about the problems with Street Fighter 5. But yeah, I don't know, man. Capcom. Good on him for turning it around. And good on Shinji Mikami. Hell of a run. If he does decide to retire at the end of this, like that's a legendary fucking career. That's a legendary set of games to have your name attached to. Resident Evil. Have you heard of this? God Hand, right? What is that one? So at the same time, I would be interested to see what he ends up doing next. So yeah, Vanquish, fucking badass. But if he chooses to retire, that's cool too. I don't know. That's gonna do it for news. Why don't we get into a handful of emails here? podcast@guard.bike is the email address that you can hit us up at. And I don't know what. All right, this is a weird. Okay, we'll read this later. This is maybe not. But this is NBC owned domain names. I kind of do want to just. It's a list of domains NBC has to purchase when they want one to appear on a poster or get mentioned in a script. They now have to legally park these names in perpetuity. Oh man, this is an amazing list. I will not say who this is from, but this is this is a list of domains that NBC has mentioned on a program and then needed to, and had to purchase the domain for because they didn't want it to go to porn, or they didn't, they needed to control where that went. And so it's a list of domains and then where they were mentioned. allamericanhunter.org. Original use. Outsourced. Don't know how it will be used. August 2012. It says Grimm Season 2. AmericanDuos.com was used on an episode of Psych and used fictitious website spoof American Idol in plain sight. Season 2, episode 14. AmishBarter.com.net.org and AmishSwap.com.net.org were all mentioned in dialogue only on a season 8 episode of Psych. I can't even get out of the A's, man. This is fucking massive. CosplayButtsandBoobs.org was mentioned on something called B99 season 5, episode 17. Crime.com is just something attributed to the USA Network. CrypticGenitals.com was spoken on air on episode 1881 of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. It just says gay marriage desk piece. And CrypticGenitals.com is really good. I should just search for Conan because I bet there's a bunch. DickViews.com was mentioned on an episode of 30 Rock. It just says Dick Cheney website. ExplosivoEnergyDrink.org was mentioned on an episode of Law and Order SVU. Pop-up on LMZ for free site that is already registered. So it was a pop-up on another fake website for Explosivo energy drink. Yes, it's the Tenacious D energy drink. EyesOnCops.com was in an episode of SVU. FilthyLittleFeet.com was a verbal mention in an episode of 30 Rock. Let's see. FreePornSoGood.com was in an episode of SVU. FreePornSoGood.com. Man, no wonder it's so hard to find a good domain these days. Oh, here we go. GamePunch.com. Game-punch.com was in a pilot for something called I Feel Bad. Man, that's the name of my energy drink. We're fucked. Let's see if any more stand out in here. GrandpaBalls.com was in an episode of Keenan. It's a game played with beach balls, according to this. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of SVU in here. HeartsDesireTV.com was in SVU. HeliosDefenseIndustries.com was also in SVU. HotelsRU.com was in an episode of Chicago Justice. HudsonDailyPatriot.com was in an episode of FBI. This is an astounding list. Oh man. KeyholeVids.com was on an episode of Keenan. And these all have expiration dates for the domains too. LateNightVets.com was on an episode of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. The commercial parody, according to this. LATiltandSuck.com. Untitled Mayor Project pilot. LA Tilt and Suck. LesbianLolitasInLibya.com is used as a blog in an episode of SVU. LinkFreeOrDie.com was used on SVU. Fake host site contains links to subversive material. Link Free or Die is so fucking good, man. So yeah, if you're just joining us, we're looking over a list of domains owned by NBC Universal because they buy every domain that gets mentioned in an episode of anything, and then they seem to maintain it forever. MarcosMattress.com, used as a coupon in an episode of Abby's. Well, I mean, we're already up to the M's, so I'm going to just... I guess we'll just keep going with this. NoExecutions.com appears in the browser history on computer in an episode of Law and Order. I'm just going to search. I'm just going to search the rest for Late Night. ThornHornyHousewivesForYou.com was on Conan O'Brien. It looks like there are eight domains listed here. Oh no, I'm sorry, 54 matches. Wait, where? It's not doing a good job of highlighting these in the PDF when I search for it, so oh well. XXXvids.com, that's vids with 2 Ds, was used in an episode of something called Impulse. YesGirlMagazine.com was in the bold type. I don't know what that is. An episode of House has a domain says Wicca needs a daddy figure.com. The Mindy Project episode 209 has whitemommy.com. Underconansdesk.com. Underthedrumcam.com. Also used on Conan. Wow. Anyway. That's crazy. This is a crazy document. I'm very excited to have read that. The person who wrote in says, mind-blowing. I agree. And I hope your television job is going well. Let's see. Dave writes in and says, enjoyed your VR explorations last week. My experience of the original PlayStation VR was best with games that had a VR mode. Skyrim and Resident Evil 7 were games I enjoyed the most with the extra immersion played with a regular controller. Because they were full experiences, there was no sense of a not fully fleshed idea left hanging. I paid £10 for the VR mode on Dirt Rally, played with a full nerd wheel and pedal rig. This was my standout VR time. I think Sony needs to pay companies to add a VR mode to regular games if they want to make a success of the new headset, or there will be that sense of unrealized potential again. Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, you're right. The benefit of if you take a full game and add VR onto it, then yeah, you've got a full game, right? It might be, you know, Skyrim obviously is 1 billion hours if you want it to be. And so, but sometimes that's clunky, right? Not every game adapts well to VR. And so, I find that games built from the ground up for VR end up being better use of the technology. But oftentimes those are lower budget or shorter games, smaller games, whatever it ends up being. And so it is kind of a weird trade-off. But yes, obviously, yes, Resident Evil 7, extremely well regarded for its VR stuff, and they did a lot of custom work there to make that happen. The Skyrim stuff is nuts, in a weird way. And yeah. Let's see. Mike from Houston writes in and says, with the rise of AI over the past year or so, with DALL-E for images and ChatGPT for text, and now OpenAI and NVIDIA releasing text to 3D models, do you think we will ever see bespoke AI-generated games in the next 5 to 10 years or in our lifetime? Imagine typing into a prompt, a roguelite set in space with a corgi protagonist, and the bad guy is Garfield from the I'm Sorry John memes. The tech is getting better, and the AI hype train doesn't seem to be slowing down. Do I think we will see a fully AI generated video game? No. Do I think that we will see something that's sort of like what you're saying, where you could type in a prompt and it will attempt to generate some kind of game? Sure. I think it'll be touched by human hands a lot more than you would think, and I don't necessarily think it'll be good, but the reason why the AI stuff is so tricky, right? And the reason why it's really hard to just straight up shit on it is if you look at a lot of the... Yeah, and JDFC brings up Scribblenauts. I think that, yeah, like what if Scribblenauts came back and it could have much richer responses to what you wrote in, because it is offloading some of that richness to the cloud, where it can sit there and spin cycles and you know, have these, you know, AI, I'm using quotes. It's not, you know, AI is such a weirdly misused term in so many different ways, you know? Yeah, I guess like there's a there's a desire. If you look at some of the tools around Unreal Engine 5 and some of the stuff that they're working on in terms of whether it's metahuman or whether it's whether it's photogrammetry, some of the different technologies that are coming up, and you look at that on the Matrix demo that they did in UE5, and you look at some of the asset store ideas over the last 10, 15 years of people being able to just buy video game assets out of the Unity store. A lot of the trend there, it's more than a trend, it's an enabler. I mean, this is something that the idea is, making games at scale is a really expensive, crazy thing with a lot of outsourcing and a lot of this. And so it's not about replacing people's jobs, though that's kind of like the dangerous downside of this, right? Is that it's like, okay, what if those people were put out of work by AI? Yeah. But also, what if a much smaller team could make a much bigger game because the technology has evolved and the tools at their disposal have evolved? It's not about, oh, what if I could just steal all this art by typing it into, control net or, stable diffuse, whatever. It, like, that aspect of it is where we're at right now, right? And it's a little plaything, and people are trying to use it for real stuff, but like it's a toy, and they're using a toy to try to make money, and a lot of them are, because they're able to kind of ride the backs of this weird wave, but at the end of the day, these will end up just being another set of tools that developers can use, and smaller teams, single person teams, very small teams can use to make much bigger games. Because as the resolution requirements for that sort of stuff increases, a lot of things just become out of reach for the average developer to make. And so, you have a lot of indie games that look like programmer art because they are, right? And they're like, oh, well, we had an artist, but we didn't have time to do this, or I did it all myself, and that's why it looks like this, and we made a fake retro game and this. And so I think in terms of having something that you can use to have developers flesh out their ideas more easily with a little bit less work and a little less money spent on their end, I think that is something that makes sense, because that fits with the trend of where a lot of game development seems to be headed. It's like a two-headed thing, and this is why it's going to be a problem down the line in some ways, because like any tool, it will be misused in ways that will fuck people up. And so I think at a small scale, it's really interesting to have an idea of a more robust version of today's tools. Like, today's tools are, again, just fucking weird toys, and it's like they're not ready for primetime use. But down the line, that stuff will grow, and the legality of some of that stuff, and hopefully some of the ethics of where the material is being sourced from gets cleaned up, and so on and so forth, so that it's something that developers could use to make a game. Whether it's, hey, we want to make AI responses more realistic, or we want to have an infinite number of quests, or whatever. The problem, I think, is when you end up in a situation where you're like, hey, these will end up being tools that will enable a small team to do something that might have taken thousands of people to do before when it comes to generating art. And I think that's really interesting, to enable small teams to do that sort of stuff. But you run into, because those are teams that would never be able to employ that sort of outsourcing, that would never be able to have access to that sort of resource in the first place. The problem gets to be when you get to a Ubisoft or something like that, and the problem gets to be when these tools get robust enough, what's to stop them from going oh, well, we're just not going to employ all of these artists at all these outsourcing studios. We're just not going to do this. Instead, we're going to use these tools, and now those people are out of work. That's the downside to it, right? And you can't have one without the other. And so I think you have to decide, You know, do you throw the technology away completely because of that? I mean, technology's advancement has always been something that is at times made jobs obsolete. And I don't think that you'll be able to, I don't think you'll want to get to a place where you are making a game with 0 artists. I think it would make sense for a small team to continue to have the same number of artists it always has. And maybe they're able to make something in a bigger scope than they were able to before. But I don't know. You know, again, the ethics of it will be the thing that fucking rip it all apart, because that'll be the part that'll be really fucked. Because you'll have people that say like, oh, well, I don't need this anymore. Well, actually, you know, I think, you know, the tools, I still think those tools will be best used by people that have a smart art background and can take whatever material they're getting and shape it in ways that are meaningful for the game. And so I guess like that's the thing. I feel like in a small team setting, it's something that could enable smaller teams to hit far above their weight. And that's always interesting. And that's, you know, and tools have developed, you know, the Unreal Engine in a lot of ways has developed in ways to try to make game making easier for more people. And, you know, whether you want to refer to that as democratized tool sets or what have you, like, I think that's been the push. That's been the reaction. But like, take AI out of it. A lot of the tools, in my understanding of it, it's been like, hey, no one can afford, you know, the scale of the games that you're trying to make and all this other stuff. The amount of art that just has to be generated, the amount of assets, like no one can actually do that. And so you're like, okay, well, if I can make some of the art and then have this robot look at the art that I've made and try to do this and try to maybe, does that work? I don't know. But you need skilled people guiding that process. It's not going to be some businessman walking in like, let me finish lighting this cigar with this $100 bill and let's type in anime Dark Souls and then hit go and then, you know, like that, you know, it's never going to be that if you want a quality product. I don't give a shit how good the AI gets. It's just not going to be able to, or that's the end of it all, right? Because then you will have a billion men and a billion cigars typing in a billion, you know, and the game market will be even more saturated than it already is. And it's just, you know, the whole thing will fall apart in a weird way. But I just don't think that that's going to be a problem. And you'll end up with shit quality. But guess what? I don't know if you looked at Steam lately, but if you want low quality video games, we are fucking swimming in them already. So I don't know. It's like, I think that end of it's a complicated topic because I like the idea of smaller teams of people being able to punch above their weight and be able to make something bigger and having tools that enable that. But where's that line get crossed on the AI front, on the ethics front, on the, hey, we're replacing artists front? That's where it obviously gets very sticky. It becomes a real mess. And, you know, it also, obviously those tools open up the door for people to be fucking scumbags. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, of course I could afford all these artists, but I'm going to type Just Dance 2025 into this thing for the Wii, and then I'm going to push this button and it's going to burn a disc, and here we go. You know, like, yeah. It's, I think you will end up in a situation where the quality of that stuff is going to be so low for so long that you're not going to inadvertently go like, whoops, I spent 1,000 hours playing a game made by a robot. It's even for as much as people are like, oh, this stuff's going to move so fast, you'll be blown away. Like, yes, but no, but also, again, I think a lot of it will come into how that stuff gets used. And, you know, if they're using it to flesh out a bunch of dumb side missions in fucking Assassin's Creed games, then that's, you know, I show me evidence that Assassin's Creed games were made by humans to begin with. You know, like that's shitty. But, you know, we talk about the bloat and open world games, and a lot of that stuff's already written by humans, and some of it ends up being generated by a machine. They have done that. That has been in shipping games. You just wouldn't call it AI because that wasn't the fancy term then. We've been working with generated run-based games and tile sets and rules and, for level generation, and people love Spelunky. So yeah, I don't know. This stuff evolves, and I think it's obviously it's going to be a very messy situation for a long time. And but that is the kernel of it that I kind of can't just, like, it's very tempting to just, okay, I'm flushing this whole thing away. Fuck this. This is going to fuck over too many humans. It's the part where it's like a small team can make better work faster. I think that's an independent team has access to more powerful tools. It's hard for me to just wave that away. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see how it all goes. I think, we'll start to get a handle on where this stuff is going to be used and misused pretty quickly, because there's too many shitty people that want to capitalize on it today, right? There's too many people that are just that look at ChatGPT, because if you fuck with ChatGPT for more than 10 minutes, you go this sucks. This is it a fun toy? Do you look at it and go ha, man, look at this crazy thing? But that's really it's yeah. Could it write me a fucking generic wordy email that says nothing? Yeah, it could. Could it write a cover letter for a resume? I guess so. Yeah, sure. But isn't the real takeaway there to be maybe we should stop fucking writing cover letters on resumes? Maybe these things that were a robot can do this. Maybe we shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Maybe we just need to stop standing on ceremony for a cover letter, for example, and move away from this type of bullshit instead of just generating even more empty text, But if you want to generate empty text, the web has been doing that for decades. SEO has been driven by fucking robots and fucking bullshit and low-paid humans. Humans have been exploited by shit forever when it comes to that sort of stuff. Go look for a fucking recipe on the internet. That's still the gold standard example for how fucked everything is. It's oh, well, here's a big long article. It's yeah, the recipe is this, but you wrote 8 paragraphs on either side of it to fucking be this is a great recipe to write when this is and you've written the most meaningless gibberish about when I was on the Champs-Élysées and then I found this recipe, because you need the page to look like a real page that humans wrote so you can trick Google. But people have been fucking trying to trick Google with robot generated text forever. For fucking ever. And so I guess I just look at that and go this will be a better version of that. And it will improve and it will, eventually, we'll see. But but at the start, the only people using that stuff in grand quantities will be people, trying to fucking scam more shit. And it's gonna, it's going to break the internet the rest of the way. This is going to be, it's a sort of situation where Google could have had a more interesting response to this when it comes to what they want to do about AI. And they could have said well, we're going to really invest in things that are, preventing people from exploiting our search engine with generated text. And we want to make sure that we're biasing in favor of actual information and not just regurgitated AI bullshit. And instead they said we've got our own AI. We're working on it too. And Google search results are already trash. They've been trash for a long time. And this is going to make them worse. It's going to make them way worse. And I'm not convinced that they will be equipped to sift through all of the text and decide this was written by AI. I think that is going to end up being the next cat and mouse game for all these SEO scam artists, for all these, places that used to hire writers that are now trying to insert AI written articles into the mix. What they'll probably do first, because the tools won't be good enough, is they'll be hey, AI generated this text. I need you, a human, somewhere else to earn $3 rewriting this. And humans will rewrite the AI-driven text to let more human and less robotic, but ever so slightly. so that it gets around some filter somewhere. And yeah, it'll be Fiverr for fucking AI robots, for de-AIifying text. And so yeah, but at the same time, again, like there are interesting uses for that technology even today. We're talking on this on the day that, like, I guess Microsoft is supposed to be rolling out the Windows update that is going to bring their Chat GPT integration to the taskbar on Windows. I believe I read that was rolling out today. I don't know. That's not something I'm interested in using on a taskbar for a search thing. I can spell the thing I'm searching for 99,999 times out of 1,000. So, but I've talked about it before. I used to review websites. There was a brief period of time we talked about it on Game Boys to Men, where Glenn and I both were employed reviewing websites for a search engine that decided they wanted human written reviews of websites. And then all the other search engines launched. Yahoo got out there. Google would be not far behind. I think they launched in like 98, something like that. And so this CMP media driven project to write human reviews of websites never even launched because the internet had passed them by. And it's funny because it was really good money at the time. If they did it again today, it would not be really good money. They would outsource all that somewhere else for pennies on the dollar to some other nation somewhere where they can get away with that. And it would not be a well-paying gig, I don't think. But, we're going to end up in this weird cycle where suddenly word of mouth and actual human interaction may matter again. Maybe not to people who don't know any better. You'll have casual users that are just like, I don't know, show me whatever. And then they'll be the ones complaining on whatever future replacement of Facebook exists about, some political viewpoint they were fed that might not even be true because it's written by AI. I don't know. It's a mess. I guess in short, everything, it's a fucking disaster. But I guess like also the thing I'm saying is that I have been on the internet long enough to tell you that it has been a version of this disaster all along. It's just that the technology is getting out there and getting more attainable for more people in a way that now you get to write your own fake SEO text. It's not just for people who bought access to some reduced version of it, some nonsense text generator that can write a bunch of stories around recipes. Humans probably wrote some of those at some point, right? I can't imagine that they, but if they did, were those humans well paid? I doubt it. So people are already getting fucked, and I don't know that the AI, the rise of AI necessarily fucks them any more or any less. I don't know. I don't know. It shifts the fuckery ever so slightly or something, right? It's a bad scene. But it's been a bad scene for a long time. People having the idea of people having SEO departments and saying like, oh, we need to rewrite the headline on this story so that Google thinks it's better because Google isn't good enough to just take the human written information and judge it accordingly. We then have to employ an entire department of people whose job it is to A/B test headlines and go like, this one goes higher, this one goes low. Do we need to change this to this? And come up with a bunch of best practices about how we write headlines and how you need to put this many links in the article and it needs to be this many paragraphs so that Google recognizes the page as real text. And this is, as soon as we got to that point, the game was already lost. And so when you ask me like, what do I think about, AI written text and all this other stuff, like there's so much low value text on the internet now already that is just being written to try to get a place on Google. There's so much time wasted. One of the things I wanted to do when we started writing news on the last website I was a part of was not do that, was to try to treat people's time with respect and say, hey, we're just going to write the one paragraph. The thing I wanted to do is be able to have, and The Verge kind of did it. For as much as that last Verge redesign was widely, people didn't seem too happy with it, their idea of like, I want to be able to write tweets on the homepage makes perfect sense, because sometimes a game gets announced, like this Elden Ring DLC. It's a tweet. So why would I write fucking how many different websites out there wrote 5 or more paragraphs about this tweet when they could have just fucking written Elden Ring DLC has been announced. Here's the name of it. They say it's in production. Further details as we get it. Not even that. Just one sentence on your homepage. Boom. In your newsfeed. Boom. Done. Respect your users' time. Move on. But that's not what Google wants. That's not what the business runs on. And so it was something that I could only ever even suggest in the context of like, well, we have a subscription component that is the main thing that gets the money in here. And so we don't have to play these fucking sick games. But it fucking sucks. But again, the internet has sucked for a long time. And so when you talk to me about AI doing this and that, I say like it's already so fucked. It's already so fucked in so many different weird ways that there's a part of me that is just like, yes, let the AI come in and blow up the rest of this bullshit, because web publishing is fucking garbage now. There's so much fucking trash out there. Like we have to, like, I'm almost like I'm a SEO accelerationist. Let's blow all this shit up. And then go back to blogs. Fucking follow me on co-host. cohost.org/Jeff Gerstmann. That's the answer. God damn it, I gotta go. All right, everybody have a good rest of your Tuesday. I hope you're having an awesome week so far. Whatever the heck else is going on. Hey, we're gonna stream some video games. I got a bunch of packages to open, so maybe we'll do a mailbag Wednesday morning. That's the hope. And then I want to play some Akka Rr for you, perhaps. I have been playing a little bit of Wo Long, but I can't really talk about that at this time. And so we'll talk more about that when that comes out, I guess. And fuck, man, I don't know. I was gonna say stay human, but I don't know. How do we take best advantage of this stuff? Can I get a cool robot arm that can like punch walls more effectively when I get mad about the internet? Is that? I don't know. We'll figure something out. Have a good one, everybody. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week or tomorrow, depending on what you're into.